Chapter 1962. This is the beloved bedwarming mate of the leader of the dark forces. If you kill her, I'm afraid it will incur the hatred of that leader. Yiqing Luo smiled lightly as she slowly leapt down from the altar. She took leisurely steps and stopped beside Yiqing Qian. When the commoners heard that, they instantly regained their senses. A look of fear and horror appeared on his face. The bedwarming mate of the leader of the dark forces. If they really killed Yiqing Qian, would the dark forces let them off? Luckily, they still retained their rationality, and when they were beating Yiqing Qian up, they didn't hit her vital points. As for the female commoners, their gazes towards Yiqing Qian were filled with disdain. On the contrary, they regretted not kicking her a few more times earlier. A vixen who relied on her seductive looks, they thought that Yiqing Qian was some official in the dark forces. They had not expected that she was just a bedwarming maid. Merely a vixen who used her power to bully others. No matter what the commoners were thinking, they had retreated out of Yiqing Qian's boundary, giving up the space to Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Qian laid on the ground on her last breath, twitching. Her clothes had long since been pulled, revealing her skin. A head of messy hair, full of dirt. There wasn't a single spot on her body which was unscathed. It could be seen how vicious those commoners were. If it was any other cultivator, they probably wouldn't be able to survive after being beaten up by hundreds or even thousands of people. Not knowing what kind of transformation Yiqing Qian had done to her body in the dark forces through the dark arts. Not only was she still alive, the injuries on her body were only superficial wounds. But it didn't harm her life. Yiqing Luo rubbed her chin as she stared at Yiqing Qian calmly. The current Yiqing Qian shouldn't be considered as a person. This kind of iron body, she probably had long become an immortal monster. You slut, I want to kill you. Yiqing Qian widened her eyes, which were filled with hatred, as she stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo. She opened her mouth and let out a low, intermittent roar. Yiqing Luo looked down at her. Looking at Yiqing Qian's disheveled state but still tenacious life force, she sighed softly. Yiqing Qian, you're really a monster. Yiqing Qian's face instantly turned pale. Even though he was in a sorry state and had all sorts of scars on his face, Yiqing Luo could still see through her pale face. Ah! Yiqing Luo half squatted down, a pill, from her fingertip, flicked into Yiqing Qian's mouth. It melted in her mouth and Yiqing Qian had no chance to spit it out. Her entire body convulsed in pain as she struggled. A pair of eyes stared venomously at Yiqing Luo, as though she was questioning Yiqing Luo on what medicine she had fed her. Yiqing Luo clapped her hands as she smiled lightly. It's just a medicinal pill to replenish your energy. Anyway, you're an immortal monster, so just stay alive and let me torture you. Nonsense. I'm not a monster, you are. Yiqing Qian's eyes were flustered, as though she had not expected that Yiqing Luo had seen through all her secrets. Her breathing was hurried, as she looked in terror at Yiqing Luo, who was slowly approaching. Suddenly, strength came from nowhere. Enduring the intense pain from being beaten up, he got up from the ground. But before she could take a step forward and run a step, suddenly a tearing pain came from the sole of her feet. It was as if something was tearing at her feet. Following that was the intense pain of her bones being smashed. Both her feet knelt heavily on the ground. Yiqing Qian raised her head in terror as she stared at Yiqing Luo. What did you do to me? My body. Star. Chapter 1963. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as she gave an alluring smile. Of course it's to stop you from leaving. Yiqing Qian's eyes were overwhelmed with shock as the intense pain made her body, which was sprawled on the ground, started to twist. Her 5 fingers clenched tightly onto the ground as the hard ground was scratched by her fingers, leaving streaks of marks. Yiqing Qian, do you think that you can still hope for those dark forces' remnants to save you? Yiqing Luo looked at her, trying her best to stand up as she couldn't help but laughed out softly. Yiqing Luo's slender brows rose as she pointed behind Yiqing Qian. Why don't you take a look? Yiqing Qian's beautiful eyes kept expanding as it was filled with malevolence. I'm not lying to you. That pill which I fed you earlier is to replenish your physical strength. Other than your legs, you still have the strength to turn your head. Yiqing Luo crossed her arms as she looked at her with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Yiqing Qian's face sunk as she moved her body. Indeed, her body, which was weakened by the commoners, regained its strength. Other than the intense pain from her legs, there wasn't any discomfort in the other parts of her body. Yiqing Qian naturally didn't feel that this was Yiqing Luo's kindness, intentionally sparing her life. This was definitely Yiqing Luo, that slut's new way of torturing people. If Yiqing Luo knew what Yiqing Qian was thinking, she would definitely smile and nod her head as she told her, "Young lady, you've guessed correctly." Yiqing Qian laid on the ground as her bent fingers clenched into a fist. After some time, she turned her head back as she looked at the place where the commoners were standing. She was filled with apprehension and uneasiness. Why, when she was being beaten up by those lowly commoners, the 200 Dark Forces men whom she had specially selected actually didn't save her or stop those commoners' actions. When Yiqing Qian turned her head back, she saw. Round after round, guards dressed in royal family's armor surrounded the entire West Square. Those 200 Dark Forces men had long been subdued by the royal family's guards and had no way to resist. The crowd slowly opened up a path. They saw a man dressed in a dragon-embroidered robe walking over with steady footsteps, filled with majesty. Dragon-embroidered robe. That was the dragon robe that only the current monarch could wear. Yiqing Qian's eyes were filled with astonishment. "You, how could you possibly?" "No, Ling Fengning, how could you?" The person in front of her was delicate, handsome, and extremely gentle. He looked like a good young master, a very amiable young master. Wasn't that the current crown prince, Ling Fengning? Hadn't she locked Ling Fengning in the crown prince's chambers? Ling Fengning's tiger talisman as well as the sovereign's jade seal had already fallen into her hands. How was it possible for Ling Fengning to become a monarch? He could even lead troops to counter her. No, impossible. Yiqing Qian staggered as she stood up and pointed at Ling Fengning as she cried out sharply, "Ling Fengning, are you thinking of rebelling? Without an imperial edict, how could you become the monarch of the West Continent?" She pointed at the imposing royal guards. "Do you all want to rebel with that traitor? Do you all want to become traitors?" Yiqing Qian was hysterical. Those royal guards did not seem to have heard what she said at all. He stood there like a towering mountain. Presumptuous. How dare you be disrespectful to the new monarch? The third-generation senior statesman rebuked angrily, "The new monarch is our West Continent's legitimate new monarch. How can we allow a woman like you to be so presumptuous?" Star. Chapter 1964. What do you mean by legitimate? You're talking rubbish. Yiqing Qian gritted her teeth. According to the West Continent's regulations, before the crown prince ascends the throne, he must obtain the army tiger emblem and West Continent jade seal from the late emperor before he can hold the ascension ceremony. After a pause, Yiqing Qian raised her voice. "He doesn't have the tiger talisman or the imperial jade seal, nor did he report the enthronement ceremony, so he can't be considered as a civil affairs official." "How can you insist that he didn't?" Yiqing Luo smiled lightly as she opened her mouth, as she slowly walked towards Ling Fengning. I. Yiqing Qian stuttered. Of course, she couldn't say that the tiger tally was with her, and the jade seal was with her. Otherwise, Yiqing Luo would definitely snatch the tiger talisman and imperial jade seal by force. She absolutely could not hand over the tiger tally and imperial jade seal. Otherwise, if Ling Fengying had a legitimate reason to cooperate with Yiqing Luo. Her plan to convince the Wolf Saint Law to start with the West Continent, to rebuild the Dark Forces, and to unify the Nirvana realm once again, was going to be ruined. She absolutely could not fail. He absolutely could not lose the backing of the Wolf Saint technique. Yiqing Qian clenched her teeth as she glanced at Ling Fengying. If he has it, then take it out and let all the commoners in West Continent have a look. Otherwise, who would be convinced by a new emperor? However, Yiqing Qian's words had just landed. A loud and clear voice suddenly erupted from the surroundings, resounding through the entire West Wave Square. I'm convinced. I'm convinced. Congratulations on your ascension to the throne. Congratulations on your ascension to the throne. The commoners were indeed experts at face slapping. Within minutes, he had slapped Yiqing Qian's face. Yiqing Qian's face turned steely green as she retreated a few steps. These few steps caused the sharp pain in her legs to attack her again, as if her bones were being torn and crushed. She screamed in pain and fell heavily to the ground. She hugged her legs and screamed in pain. Her screams were instantly drowned out by the enthusiastic shouts of the people. Ling Fengying's popularity in the commoners' hearts had always been extremely high. Even when Ling Fenghua was still around. Ling Fengying was the most beloved prince by the people. After that, Ling Fengying became the crown prince, the future monarch. The commoners all raised their hands in approval. Right now, the Western continent was under the control of an evil woman, and she was willfully slaughtering the innocent, dyeing the Western continent with blood. Even if Ling Fengying didn't officially become the new monarch, they would definitely use their mouths, portraying Ling Fengying as the rightful new ruler. Now that Ling Fengying had come out, he was saving the West Continent from the abyss of suffering. The commoners didn't care if he had the tiger seal or the jade seal. Those superficial things were of no use to the common people. They only knew that once Ling Fengying became the new monarch, their country would be prosperous and the people would be at peace. Yiqing Qian was convulsing in pain. He could still hear those commoners' passionate cheers for Ling Fengying. Her heart was bone-chilling. If she had known earlier, she would have killed Ling Fengying. Without the tiger talisman, without the imperial jade seal, Ling Fengying had no real power at all. What right did he have to become the monarch of the Western continent? The third-generation doyen looked at the woman lying on the ground in agony. He took out something from his bosom and held it up high. The tiger seal is here, royal army, listen up. Those tens of thousands of valiant and high-spirited royal guards exploded into a deep roar in unison. The royal army is here. Today, this general will hand over the royal tiger seal to the new monarch. The new monarch will lead the royal army to kill this evil woman. Protect the Western continent. The tiger seal was respectfully presented to Ling Fengying. Star. Yiqing Qian let out a blood-curdling scream as she was whipped and rolled on the ground several times. Yiqing Qian's body was also left with a deep whip mark. Yiqing Luo. That's mine. Yiqing Qian saw the long whip in Yiqing Luo's hand and was so infuriated that a mouthful of blood spurted out. Yiqing Luo was holding the dark illusion whip in her hand. Yiqing Qian and the dark illusory whip had long signed the contract. Yiqing Luo held the dark illusory whip and actually didn't encounter any resistance from the dark illusory whip. This was impossible. Yiqing Qian tried hard to adjust the profound qi in her body, trying to summon the dark illusion whip. But no matter how she tried to summon it, the dark illusion whip just hung limply in Yiqing Luo's hand, without any reaction at all. More accurately speaking, she didn't detect any presence from the dark illusion whip at all. Could it be? Could it be that Yi Qing Luo had destroyed her dark illusion whip and completely corroded the dark illusion whip's demonic qi? No. How could Yi Qing Luo possibly have such an ability? Star. Chapter 1966. Yi Qing Luo seemed to have noticed Yi Qing Qian's surprise. She shook the dark magic whip in her hand, like a poisonous snake, twisting and circling. She giggled, "Don't be surprised, it's not the first time I destroyed your long whip." You. Yi Qing Qian's face suddenly turned gloomy. Of course she would not forget how Yi Qing Luo humiliated her in the past. Yi Tianquang racked his brains, spent money and resources to find a supreme-grade whip for her. In the end, Yi Qing Luo handed it over to Ling Fenghua's hands, allowing Ling Fenghua to destroy her soft whip in front of her. At that time, she truly loved Ling Fenghua. The whip was destroyed. She was heartbroken. Now, Yi Qing Luo had once again destroyed her second long whip. Demonic weapons should not appear in Nirvana realm. Yi Qing Luo suddenly moved her wrist. The long whip in her hand turned into a poisonous snake, scuttling in the direction of Yi Qing Qian. The poisonous snake was like an afterimage, winding and circling in the air. As if it had a life of its own, it heavily whipped Yi Qing Qian's body. Yi Qing Qian screamed miserably. There was another bloody whip mark on her body. The whip mark was scarlet, oozing blood. It was a ghastly sight. Yi Qing Qian knelt on the ground from the whip. She looked at Yi Qing Luo with eyes full of disbelief. Yi Qing Luo's whip skills were too strange. When Yi Qing Luo lashed out, she didn't even have time to see the trajectory of the long whip. One must know that this dark magic whip was already a dead object. Even she would not be able to execute such a smooth whip technique. How was this possible? Since when did Yi Qing Luo have such attainments in whip skills? Yi Qing Qian, don't you like to play with the whip? Now, I will accompany you to play. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled up slightly, her sweet smile seemed to carry the brilliance of the world. But when he met her charming eyes, he could clearly see the murderous intent in Yi Qing Luo's eyes. Yi Qing Qian obviously saw that murderous intent. Yi Qing Qian was terrified. He had clearly thought of thousands of possibilities. However, he had never thought that things would take such a turn. Ling Fengning became the new monarch and led the royal army to subdue the people from the dark forces whom she had been relying on. He had lost the help of the dark forces. In front of Yi Qing Luo, she was just a drag. Could it be, was he really going to die in Yi Qing Luo's hands today? No, she didn't want to die. Before Yi Qing Luo died, how could she be willing to die? Yi Qing Qian's malevolent face was howling as she suddenly pounced towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Her pounce was too sudden. Among the crowd, a few panicky and anxious cries were heard, "Qing Luo." A few figures walked out from the crowd. Just as Yi Qing Qian was about to pounce onto Yi Qing Luo, suddenly, a long edge transformed into countless black whip shadows in midair. Immediately following that, it covered the sky and covered the earth, as it tightly bound Yi Qing Qian into the long whip. "Don't worry, how could I let you die?" Yi Qing Luo sneered as her arms suddenly exerted strength and threw the bound Yi Qing Qian heavily onto the ground. Ah! Yi Qing Qian let out a blood-curdling scream. Paw paw paw. Paw paw paw. Paw paw. A series of long whip lashing sounds were heard, one after another. The long whip didn't contain any profound qi. It was just that brute force lashing, on the contrary, made one's skin split open, causing unbearable pain. One whip after another, the entire sky above the public square was filled with paw-paw sounds. Star. Chapter 1967. Yi Qingqian screamed miserably. Her body was whipped as she rolled on the ground. Her skin and flesh, which had just been healed by Yi Qingluo's pill, was whipped once again, and it was a horrible sight to behold. Yi Qingqian's miserable cries continued. The surroundings were in silence. No one dared to open their mouths to break the atmosphere. Everyone's eyes were filled with shock and admiration as they looked at the young lady who had whipped Yi Qingqian till she rolled on the ground. Could it be that she had fed Yi Qingqian the pill earlier so that she could whip to her heart's content now? Looking at Yi Qingluo whipping one after another ruthlessly. But the expression on her face had not changed at all. A faint smile hung on her lips as her eyes squinted, looking extremely languid. This young lady was really terrifying. Yi Qingluo whipped Yi Qingqian, and every whip was full of strength. Even though she didn't release her profound energy. These whips were enough to destroy Yi Qingqian's internal organs and every single one of her tendons. That's right, tendons. Every whip from Yi Qingluo was on Yi Qingqian's tendons and bones. She wanted to shatter Yi Qingqian's bones and break her tendons. No matter how Yi Qingqian's body was transformed into an undying monster. Under this kind of shattering whips, there was no way to reverse the situation. Yi Qingqian had been jumping around for too long. Every time she jumped around, it would hurt her brothers. Her reverse scale was her brothers. Yi Qingqian had challenged her bottom line time and time again. Yi Fengyu was almost killed by her. Devil Class's brothers almost died because of her. The brothers in the world group suffered serious injuries time and time again because of her. All of these, if it wasn't to make Yi Qingqian unable to live or die, how would she be able to vent the anger in her heart? Letting Yi Qingqian die was letting her off too easily. Yi Qingqian's life wasn't as valuable as a strand of her brother's hair. She would not let Yi Qingqian die. She would let Yi Qingqian live in despair, living her days in despair. Paw! A sharp glint flashed past Yi Qingluo's eyes. The long whip in her hand had ruthlessly smashed Yi Qingqian onto the side of the altar. Following that, another round of whip shadows fell from the sky. Time passed, second by second. After an unknown period of time, the commoners only felt their legs go numb, and their bodies almost stiffened from maintaining a posture. Yi Qingluo then slowly retracted her long whip. When Yi Qingluo stopped her whipping, the commoners were shocked as they looked at the place where the abuse was taking place. Blood and minced meat were splattered all over the altar. Yi Qingqian laid on the ground. How would she have the strength to stand up? Apart from her face, there was not a single part of her body that was unscathed. His skin was lacerated and his flesh was badly mangled. Blood stained the place where she was lying. The entire scene was as terrifying as it could be. They were as shocked as they could be. It was as disgusting as it could get. Some of the more timid ones directly bent over and began to vomit. This scene was truly too shocking. He had seen beheadings and torture. He would say that he had never seen such a bloody whipping. What was even more terrifying was, under this kind of whipping situation, Yi Qingqian remained conscious from the start till the end. Even though his body was a bloody mess, his bones were broken, and his tendons were severed. However, she still had one breath left. Furthermore, her consciousness was extremely clear. Moreover, she had sufficient energy. She could scream miserably, she could curse, she could roar, her voice was sharp and shrill. But she just didn't have the energy to avoid Yi Qingluo's long whip. She remained conscious, suffering the whipping to such an extent. Chapter 1968. Yi Qingluo. Kill me if you have the ability. Just kill me. Yi Qingqian was in so much pain that she wished she was dead as she cried out in pain. She simply couldn't stand such cruel treatment. She could clearly feel the pain of her body being whipped, the feeling of her bones being smashed, the feeling of her meridians being ripped. The pain of being whipped one after another on her body. She could also clearly feel the heart-wrenching, lung-splitting, and tearing pain of her flesh being torn apart. She wanted to die. Rather die. She didn't want to suffer such torture. Qing Luo, enough. Behind her, those few people who had just walked out from the crowd rushed up to the altar. They stood behind Yi Qing Luo, their eyes filled with worry. Earlier Yi Qing Luo was totally not like her usual self. That kind of imposing manner. That kind of ruthlessness. Even if it was them, they were slightly flustered. Most of them were worried about Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Qian, who was lying on the ground, conscious, her gaze swept past those few ordinary-looking people dressed in coarse linen clothes, as her eyes suddenly widened viciously. It's you guys. It's you guys. Earlier it was you guys who incited those commoners to make a move against me. If they were ordinary commoners, how would they dare to lead the way? This was Yi Qing Luo's scheme. It was Yi Qing Luo who had arranged people first, preparing to kill with a borrowed knife at the right time. Seeing that they were exposed, Long Yunzhan and the others slowly tore off the human skin mask on their faces, revealing their original looks. These few people were indeed arranged by Yi Qing Luo, to mix in among the commoners. Long Yunzhan, Mo Yuing, Tong Zi Qing trio. But they weren't specially arranged to incite the commoners, to intentionally lead the way. She only wanted them to investigate what kind of trap Yi Qing Qian had set, waiting for her to fall into it. But she had not expected Yi Qing Qian to be so confident in herself. She thought that with the 200 Dark Forces remnants, and using the Mu family and the commoners as a bargaining chip, she would be able to force Yi Qing Luo to give in. Hence, it gave Yi Qing Luo a chance to retaliate. In the end, it turned out to be like this. To put it bluntly, it was caused by Yi Qing Qian's overconfidence. Long Yunzhan took a look at Yi Qing Qian, who had almost turned into a pile of rotten flesh as his brows creased as he asked calmly, Qing Luo, what do you intend to do with her next? If Yi Qing Luo still wanted to torture Yi Qing Qian, then he would be the one to do it. He simply couldn't bear to see that cold and ruthless Qing Luo again. Of course. Yi Qing Luo smiled sweetly as she looked down at Yi Qing Qian, sent her back to Wolf Saint technique. Yi Qing Qian's eyes suddenly lit up as she stared at Yi Qing Luo in astonishment and suspicion. You. What tricks are you trying to play again? How could Yi Qing Luo possibly send her back to Wolf Saint technique's side? If she returned to Wolf Saint Law's side, how could he let the Wolf Saint technique let Yi Qing Luo off? This was definitely one of Yi Qing Luo's tricks. Yi Qing Luo wanted to see her despairing expression and intentionally deceived her. Send them back. Tong Zi Qing was also stunned. Wouldn't that be releasing a tiger back to the mountain? Yi Qing Luo chuckled, her eyes filled with ridicule. Tiger. Her. He had already turned into a pile of rotten meat, yet he still wanted to turn things around. Of course, nothing was absolute. But would she give Yi Qing Qian a chance to turn things around? No. She would only give Yi Qing Qian endless despair. Suddenly, just at this moment, the sound of horse hooves was heard from the commoner's direction. A royal guard flipped down and speedily rushed towards Ling Fengying as he knelt down. Immediately following that, Ling Fengying's steady voice rang, Miss Yi, it's bad. The Dark Forces have brought along a few other forces and are rushing towards West Lawn Public Square. Star. Chapter 1969. Dark Forces. When the commoners heard the new emperor's words, their expressions changed drastically. They had witnessed the power of the Dark Coalition. Over the past few days, the Dark Forces had shrouded the entire Western continent at an extremely fast speed and had taken control of every major force and family. He heard that the Dark Organization had also brought a few other organizations here. The commoners were all panicking. The courage he had to beat up Yi Qingqian earlier had now vanished into thin air. Yi Qingluo's slender brows rose slightly as she raised her eyes towards Lang Fengying. Then, the corners of her mouth curled up. So what? Since he's here, then he's here. The matter of the West Continent can also be settled once and for all. Lang Fengying's tightly creased brows slowly relaxed. His eyes were resolute as he solemnly gazed at Yi Qingluo. Since Yi Qingluo said so. Which meant that Yi Qingluo already had a foolproof plan. As long as Yi Qingluo hadn't collapsed, the Western Continent could still be saved. What he needed to do was to fully believe in Yi Qingluo, to fully assist her. By now, Lang Fengying had already bet the latter half of his life, as well as everything in the West Continent, on Yi Qingluo. He firmly believed that his foresight had never been wrong. Ha ha ha. Wolf Saint technique is here to save me. Yi Qingluo, you're dead meat. You will definitely die. When Yi Qingjian, who was lying on the ground, heard this news, her face immediately revealed an ecstatic expression. Yi Qingluo squinted her eyes slightly, as she looked at the lady by her feet with a smile which didn't look like a smile, and scoffed lightly, really? It seems that the dark forces really have a way to rebuild another body for you. She had already turned into a pile of rotten flesh, and Yi Qingqian still wanted to use the Wolf Saint art to save her. It could be seen that the Wolf Saint technique definitely had a way to solve the problem of her rotten flesh. The dark secret art was already this heaven-defying. Yi Qingqian stared at Yi Qingluo fiercely. Wolf Saint Law dotes on me so much, he will definitely cure me. As for you, you will die in the hands of the Holy Wolf technique. Moreover, the Wolf Saint Law will definitely let you die in extreme agony for me. Yi Qingqian's malevolent face radiated an intense murderous intent. Just thinking about the Wolf Saint technique made him rush over. She could almost see the state of Yi Qingluo's death. The blood in his heart began to boil. Really? Yi Qingluo's brows rose as she gave an extremely elegant smile. Just nice. I also want to see with my own eyes how much the Wolf Saint technique pampers you. As she spoke, she smiled and narrowed her eyes. She then continued in a seemingly unintentional manner, so, I'm here to test the Wolf Saint's love for you. Yi Qingluo's words made Yi Qingjian's face turn pale. The expression on his face also froze. Recalling the miserable state of being whipped, Yi Qingqian was overwhelmed with shock. What else do you want to do? Paw! A whip flew out horizontally. That long whip landed heavily on Yi Qingqian's face. A scarlet line of blood appeared on that sinister and twisted but still extremely bewitching face. Yi Qingqian let out a blood-curdling scream as she didn't even have the strength to cover her face. My face! My face! Paw! Another whip landed on Yi Qingqian's face. Yi Qingqian screamed miserably, Don't hit my face. Don't ruin my face. Yi Qingluo, I'm apologizing to you, it's all my fault, don't touch my face. She wanted to struggle and avoid Yi Qingluo's whip. But she couldn't muster up any strength at all. She could only cry and beg Yi Qingluo not to touch this face which she depended on for survival. Even if it was to lower her head to the Yi Qingluo whom she had always hated, she was willing. Chapter 1970. Yi Qingluo stopped. She bent down slightly and glanced at Yi Qingqian who was begging for mercy. She smiled. Her long and narrow eyes outlined an incomparably beautiful arc. It seems like you are quite self-aware. She whispered and her laughter was soothing. Yi Qingqian shook her head with all her might as the wounds on her face started to drip with blood. Her eyes were filled with shock as she cried out, I beg you Yi Qingluo, I beg you. Don't touch my face, even if you kill me. Don't touch my face. The commoners were all dumbstruck. Even when she was whipped into a pile of minced meat, Yi-Ching-Chien had never given in. But now, because of her looks, she lowered her voice and begged bitterly. This was the so-called, to a lady, her face was more important than her life. For her own face. Even if she had to die. But if she lost her life, what was the use of her face? Yi-Ching-Chien begged over and over again, but it didn't move Yi-Ching-Luo at all. Yi-Ching-Luo swung her long whip, which was like a poisonous snake's whip shadow as it swayed gently. Her long and narrow eyes squinted slightly as a glint flashed past. But Yi-Ching-Chien, have you ever thought of letting my brothers off when you dealt with them? Yi-Ching-Chien's begging stopped abruptly. Yi-Ching-Luo laughed lightly, you won't. Yes, Yi-Ching-Chien would not let Yi-Ching-Luo's brothers off. To Yi-Ching-Chien, killing Yi-Ching-Luo's brothers was equivalent to cutting off Yi-Ching-Luo's left and right arms. Yi-Ching-Chien couldn't wait to kill everyone who was related to Yi-Ching-Luo. How could she possibly let Yi-Ching-Luo's brothers off? Similarly, Yi-Ching-Luo would not let her off. Yi-Ching-Chien's face was filled with dead despair. Rumble. Da-da-da. A deafening sound was heard from afar. The dark forces and those who had already collaborated with the dark forces rushed over with the main force. Yi-Ching-Luo raised her eyes and looked towards the direction of that black mass, attacking from. Suddenly, her lips curled into an indistinct cold smile. Yi-Ching-Chien, I really can't wait to know if you two are true love. Following Yi-Ching-Luo's sweet laughter. The long whip in her hand covered the sky and covered the earth as it struck towards Yi-Ching-Chien's face, as it struck downwards. Ah! Yi-Ching-Luo. You bitch. I'll kill you, I'll kill you. Yi-Ching-Chien's miserable cries resounded throughout the entire West Continent. Wolf Saint Technique, who had rushed over, also heard Yi-Ching-Chien's voice. Wolf Saint Dharma leapt up and quickly walked past the commoners, landing on the altar as he frantically searched for traces of Yi-Ching-Chien. On the altar, sand and dust billowed. He had not yet steadied himself. Suddenly, something was thrown towards him. Wolf Xingfa's eyes turned cold, and he lifted his leg to kick at the incoming object. With a muffled groan, that thing was kicked to the ground. Wolf Xingfa's face turned green as he focused his gaze. The one he had kicked off the altar just now, it was Yi-Ching-Chien, who had been whipped till her entire body was in a terrible state. Wolf Saint Dharma's heart tightened as he stared at Yi-Ching-Chien's broken body, as his body trembled slightly. He speedily rushed down the altar and knelt beside Yi-Ching-Chien. Did you hear what I said? Respond to me, respond to me. Wolf Saint Dharma's voice was trembling, as though it was filled with boundless affection. Yi-Ching-Chien, who was lying in a pile of minced meat on the ground, trembled slightly. Chapter 1971. Wolf Saint Magic saw Yi-Ching-Chien's body trembling slightly, a trace of ecstasy flashed past his eyes. Alive, still alive, that's good, as long as she was still alive. Even if this body was crippled, it didn't matter. Just nice, he could also use the dark arts, to fulfill his long-cherished wish. The corners of Wolf Saint Magic's mouth couldn't help but rise. Both hands covered Yi-Ching-Chien's head. That was the only place Yi-Ching-Chien could touch. Wolf Saint Magic, save me, save me. Yi-Ching-Chien tried hard to make her voice sound aggrieved and pitiful. Her head was gently turned towards his direction by the Holy Wolf technique. Yi-Ching-Chien adjusted the expression on her face, a pair of beautiful eyes, sparkling with tears of grievance. Blinking his eyes, he poured out his endless suffering. But Yi-Ching-Chien thought that her pitiful trick would succeed. But when Wolf Saint Magic's vision touched Yi-Ching-Chien's face, the gentle expression on his face stiffened, his eyes suddenly filled with a violent storm. His 5 fingers suddenly tightened, grabbing Yi Qingqian's long hair. Yi Qingqian felt the pain, drew a cold breath, and suddenly tears overflowed. "Wolf Saint Magic, you're hurting me," she said it coquettishly, pitiful. Usually, Wolf Saint Magic loved this tone of voice of hers. But, this time, it made Wolf Saint Magic increase the strength in his hands. He pulled her hair, lifting her up. Yi Qingqian only felt a tingling pain on her scalp, so painful that she almost fainted. In her ears, Wolf Saint Magic's vicious and furious growl rang. "How dare you hurt your own face? How dare you ruin your own face? Wolf! Wolf Saint Magic!" Yi Qingqian's eardrum seemed to be ruptured, her face twisted in pain. This distortion caused her face, which was covered in bloody scars from being whipped by the long whip and could almost be described as a bloody mess, to appear even more terrifying. It also stimulated Wolf Saint Magic's vision. His sinister eyes stared fiercely at Yi Qingqian's face. 5 fingers suddenly clasped her lower jaw. "Yi Qingqian. You obviously know. This Saint Magic most values your face. How dare you hurt this face, to this extent?" Yi Qingqian's body stiffened. Her fine black hair that was being hung up and the sharp pain of her scalp being pulled could not compare to the piercing pain of the Wolf Saint technique's words. The name that the Wolf Saint art called her was no longer but Yi Qingqian. He wanted to take back her identity as protector. Did he want to abandon her? Yes, she had always known. The holy wolf Dharma doted on her in every possible way because of her face. Her face was exactly the same as the face of the woman he loved deeply. The woman that Lang Xingfa deeply loved had always been a taboo in the dark forces. Yi Qingqian did not know much. He only knew that the woman used to be one of the holy techniques of the dark forces, called the Fox Holy Technique. As for her, it was because her appearance was exactly the same as the Fox Saint technique. He caught the attention of the Wolf Saint technique. He enjoyed the boundless love of the Wolf Saint technique. Yi Qingqian wasn't worried about becoming a substitute. She knew that the so-called Fox Saint technique had followed the King of Darkness to death after the King of Darkness had been sealed 10,000 years ago. How could a dead person compete with her? Yi Qingqian had always thought that with her means. It was just a matter of time for the Wolf Saint technique to fall in love with her. But now, Yi Qingqian knew that her cognition was wrong. She didn't have this face, so she didn't have the bargaining chip to attract the Wolf Saint technique. Without the Wolf Saint technique, she was only had consciousness, but her body was completely destroyed. How could she survive? Chapter 1972. Wolf Saint technique. You can heal my face can definitely be healed. Yi Qingqian opened her mouth in trepidation as she stuttered, "I'm wrong, it's my fault. I shouldn't have relied on your adoration and acted recklessly. I shouldn't have discussed with you and found trouble with Yi Qingluo. Wolf Saint technique, save me, I will definitely serve you well, whatever you want." Yi Qingqian knew. As long as Wolf Saint technique was willing. Wolf Saint technique definitely had a way to save her. Her face, her crippled body, could all receive a brand new transformation. Yi Qing Luo. Wolf Saint technique gritted his teeth as he spat out these 3 words. Suddenly, he raised his head abruptly. His scarlet-red eyes were like a sharp blade, piercing fiercely towards Yi Qingluo's direction. Yi Qingluo stood leisurely on the altar, her long and narrow eyes squinted as her slender brows rose, apparently in a good mood. More accurately speaking, she was the one who was enjoying the show. She guessed correctly. What Wolf Saint technique cared about was indeed Yi Qingqian's face. That time at the Dark Forces, when she saw that Wolf Saint technique knew that Yi Qingqian once had 2 men, he didn't reveal any jealous expression, so she had her suspicions. If he really loved Yi Qingqian, then how was it possible that when he heard about Ling Fenghua or Ling Fengying, he wasn't moved at all? Today's test was indeed as expected, exactly the same. Yi Qingluo's lips curled up in ridicule as she squinted at Wolf Saint Technique and laughed softly. So Wolf Saint Technique's love is so shallow. It's just a face ruined and he abused her in this way. I really feel bitterly disappointed for my poor eldest sister. The commoners. Was this called ruining a face? This was basically ruining Yi Qingqian's entire person. They were very curious, how on earth did Yi Qingluo manage to pull off such nonsense in a serious manner? The veins on Wolf Saint Technique's forehead popped out as the sinister scarlet eyes glinted with an even more intense glint. Yi Qingluo clicked her tongue. My eldest sister's entire life had already been extremely miserable. In order to climb up the throne, she finally managed to sleep with the previous crown prince and worked hard to climb up to the current monarch. Luckily our new monarch is an upright gentleman and was not moved. This big sister of mine can only linger around, and finally met such a good man like Wolf Saint Fa, but unfortunately, he's such a shallow person. She shook her head and said regretfully, I really feel sad for my poor sister. Poochie, the commoners couldn't help but laugh out loud. This Miss Ye's mouth was indeed a little too poisonous. Although she was speaking up for her elder sister, she still felt that it was unfair. But apparently, it was to tell everyone about Yi Qingqian's glorious achievements. This Yi Qingqian was once the #1 beauty in Three Springs City. As it turned out, she was just a high-class lady with the title of a daughter of a rich family. No, that's not right. Three Springs sect had long severed all relations with Yi Qingqian. Yi Qingqian couldn't even be considered as a high-ranking lady. Wolf Saint Technique's eyes were filled with anger as he clenched his fists tightly and gritted his teeth as he stared fiercely at Yi Qingluo and shouted sternly, Yi Qingluo, if you dare to hurt her face, I want your life. Wolf Saint Technique only cared about Yi Qingqian's face. As for that body, how many men had been there before, he didn't care. What he wanted was that face. But, Yi Qingluo actually destroyed that face. He had completely destroyed the only obsession he had for thousands of years. He must make Yi Qingluo pay a painful price. Bam! He flipped his palm and slapped Yi Qingqian's body towards Heiji, who was curled up in the corner of the altar. Heiji hurriedly caught Yi Qingqian, who was like mud. Stay here for this Saint Technique. If you let this face get hurt to such a state, this Saint Technique will settle the score with you later. Wolf Saint Technique threw out a sentence. His figure suddenly flashed as he flew towards the altar. Star. Chapter 1973. Wolf Saint Technique landed on the altar, standing face to face with Yi Qingluo. His sinister eyes shot out an intense ruthless light. He clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles were protruding. Yi Qingluo gave a light smile. Oh. Is Wolf Saint Technique fighting with me for the dark forces or for Yi Qingqian's face? Wolf Saint Technique sneered, I'm not going to argue with you. Today, I'm going to avenge the King of Darkness. To avenge the dark forces. If it wasn't for Yi Qingluo, the dark forces would have controlled half of Nirvana realm by now. If it wasn't for Yi Qingluo, the King of Darkness's plan would have succeeded. If it wasn't for Yi Qingluo, they would still be the high and mighty Dark Saint Technique. But now, everything was ruined because of Yi Qingluo. The dark forces were completely exposed in Nirvana realm. Absorbing the young cultivator's soul had also infuriated Nirvana realm. There was no place for them in Nirvana realm. Moreover, Yi Qingluo joined forces with the Imperial Palace to exterminate the dark forces, almost losing 2/3 of the dark forces. Now, the dark forces who escaped with the few pharaohs and saint techniques were not more than 1,000 people. All these were thanks to Yi Qing Luo. Now, the Dark Forces revival could only depend on the West Continent to make a comeback. They could only succeed and not fail. Yi Qing Luo must die. Wolf Saint Technique's face sunk as he raised his hand high. Everyone, when the Dark Forces take over the West Continent, the conditions that I promised you will be fulfilled. Behind him, a deafening roar was heard, echoing Wolf Saint Technique's words. Yi Qing Luo raised her brows as she looked past Wolf Saint Technique towards the crowd. She was very interested in the forces that chose to cooperate with the Dark Forces at this time. Did those people really believe that the Dark Forces had the ability to destroy the West Continent, or were they stupid? This look was within Yi Qing Luo's expectations, but at the same time, it was unexpected. Yi Fengru represented Three Springs Sect and brought Three Springs Sect's power to stand with the Dark Forces, which was expected. After all, when Three Springs Sect restored Yi Qing Qian's identity, it indicated that Three Springs Sect would cooperate with the Dark Forces. And the reason why Yi Qing Qian was able to control the entire West Continent so quickly, even the four great families were unable to resist. It was because of the Three Springs Sect's help. The Three Springs Sect had to stand on the side of the Dark Forces no matter what. As for the one standing beside Yi Fengru, it made Yi Qing Luo a little surprised. Because, wasn't that person the patriarch of one of the four great profounder clans, the Shengguan clan? Ever since the Shengguan clan was expelled from the four great profounder clans. Then, he vanished without a trace. He never heard any news about the Shengguan clan again. He never expected to see the Shengguan clan on the side of the Dark Forces. It could be seen that after the Shengguan clan was removed from the list, they had no choice but to follow the Dark Forces. What Yi Qing Luo was most concerned about was the person standing behind Yi Fengru and the Shengguan family. Yi Qing Luo's intuition told her that that person was the most dangerous. It was a woman of about 40 years of age. He was dressed in a coarse green robe, and his hair was tied neatly behind his head like a man's. She looked like a Taoist nun. There was a long sword on her back, and the sword hilt was emitting a black aura, which was extremely terrifying. This person looked extremely unfamiliar. In Yi Qing Luo's memory, she had never seen her before. Star. Chapter 1974. 10 Views. Sect Leader of 10 Views. Suddenly, someone in the crowd exclaimed. After the exclamations were heard, the crowd all turned their gazes to the heroic woman who looked like a Taoist nun. 10 Views. That was the biggest sect in Nirvana realm. The sect leader of 10 Views was in cahoots with the Dark Forces. The people couldn't help but feel a piercing chill in their hearts. If the biggest sect in Nirvana realm intervened in this matter, even Yi Qing Luo might not be able to get away with it. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her brows. When she heard that the person who made her feel a sense of danger was the sect leader of 10 Views, she finally understood where that sense of danger came from. She had heard rumors about the 10 sceneries. About 10 Views, she had some understanding. 10 Views, the biggest sect in Nirvana realm. It was located in the most prosperous area of Jade Dome City in East Continent. It could be said that 10 Views' status in East Continent had surpassed the royal family. It could almost be said that they were on equal footing with one of the four major sects, Jade Dome Sect. One must know that the sect leaders of the other three sects were all extremely bold people, completely different from Yi Tianquang, who desperately tried to lower the status of Three Springs Sect to please other forces in the other three continents. When the royal family saw the sect leader, they had to bow respectfully. In this case, 10 Views could still be on equal footing with Jade Dome Sect. It could be seen the strength of 10 Views. The sect leader of 10 Views, Jing Yanyan, stood under the altar. And Yi Qing Luo stood on the altar. For eyes met, as if Yi Qing Luo was at a high place, overlooking the sect leader of 10 Views. Jing Yanyan's expression sank slightly, suddenly leaped up and flew up from behind Shangguan family patriarch and Yifeng Ru, towards the altar. The commoners sucked in a breath of cold air. This sect leader of 10 views was indeed the sect leader of the biggest sect. This boldness, even the dark force's wolf saint technique couldn't be compared. Jing Yanyan held her head high, with the arrogant posture of a sect leader, coldly glanced at Yiqing Luo. Is it you who bullied my disciple and disgraced the reputation of 10 views? The people gasped again. Right. They had forgotten. Yiqing Qian was the only direct disciple that the head of Shijing sect had personally chosen. Yiqing Qian was once the #1 beauty in Three Springs City. When she was 10 years old, she was brought back to 10 Scenery by Jing Yanyan and cultivated there for 3 years. The only direct disciple. No wonder Jing Yanyan would join the Dark Forces camp for Yiqing Qian. Looking at this stance, Jing Yanyan wanted to take revenge for her direct disciple, right? Pucci, a chuckle interrupted the thoughts of the people. Only to see Yiqing Luo covering her mouth as she laughed incomparably delightfully. He. What sect leader Shijing said is rather laughable. When did I bully your disciple and disgrace your Shijing sect's reputation? Without waiting for Jing Yanyan to speak, Yiqing Luo continued, bully your disciple? If your disciple hadn't tried to kill me time and time again, causing my brothers to almost lose their lives, wouldn't I have been able to retaliate? Or does the sect leader of the 10 Scenery sect think that the 10 Scenery sect is the #1 sect in the Nirvana realm, so you can act as you please outside, harming other people's lives? Pausing for a moment, she continued, and when others retaliate, is it a humiliation to 10 Scenery? Sect leader Shijing sect rules have really broadened my horizons. When Jing Yanyan heard that, she sneered and said with a proud look, that's right, my Shijing disciples can be like this. My Shijing disciples can do whatever they want outside. If anything happens, this sect leader will bear the responsibility. But if outsiders hurt my Shijing disciples, this sect leader will absolutely not let them off. Chapter 1975. His words were extremely domineering and overbearing. If the disciples of the 10 sites were present, they would probably be so touched that they would sacrifice their lives for her. However, these words, in the ears of the common people, were a declaration of war. So her disciple was a human. Others were not human. This view was also slightly intoxicated. In that case, sect head Shijing is determined to stand up for Yiqing Qian today. Yiqing Luo's slender brows curved into a smile as she asked with a light smile. Not only for my disciple, but also for the reputation of the 10 sites. Jing Yanyan's eyes were flowing with a sharp light. She finally understood why Yiqing Qian insisted on going against Yiqing Luo. Because of this seemingly sweet and harmless girl. In fact, it was too dangerous. If she couldn't be used for herself, then it must be done quickly. Otherwise, the one who would die in the future would be herself. Pfft, Yiqing Luo couldn't help but laugh out loud. She laughed so hard that her stomach felt pain. She covered her abdomen and giggled non-stop. Jing Yanyan's face was like a dying workshop, green and red. Until Jing Yanyan's eyebrows twitched, obviously unable to hold back and was about to explode. Yiqing Luo stopped laughing, her slender fingers stroked her eyelashes and wiped away the tears of laughter. She giggled and said, the one who tarnished the reputation of the 10 Visions, wasn't it the direct disciple who was personally taught by the 10 Visions sect master, the one whose skills were inferior to others? The expression on Jing Yanyan's face was completely stiff and livid. Not waiting for Jing Yanyan to explode. In front of her, suddenly, an afterimage like a ray of sunlight flashed past. Jing Yanyan hadn't reacted yet, only heard a crisp, paw sound of a slap in her ear. At the same time, he felt a burning pain on his cheek. Jing Yanyan's eardrum buzzed sound. The sound made her brain hurt like it was being torn apart. The wind blew and the smoke dispersed. Everyone clearly saw Jing Yanyan on the altar, the obvious red and swollen handprint on her face. The audience was silent. The 10-site sect master was slapped in the face. And the person who slapped her. She stood there leisurely as if nothing had happened, as if everything had nothing to do with her. Jing Yanyan only came back to her senses after a long while. The stinging pain on her cheeks caused her expression to gradually turn ferocious. The arrogance and dignity of the sect leader suddenly collapsed. Her gaze seemed to be burning with raging fury as she stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo. "You, how dare you? Yiqing Luo, this sect master is absolutely irreconcilable with you." Yiqing Luo smilingly pulled out a handkerchief and slowly wiped her hands. "Patriarch Shijing, I'm just using my actions to show that I'm actually quite similar to Shijing's sect." Her hand that was wiping her hands suddenly paused. She raised her eyes with a smile and gazed at Jing Yanyan with a light smile. In her charming eyes, a cold light flowed wantonly, like an ice-cold poisonous snake, locking onto Jing Yanyan. Jing Yanyan's heart skipped a beat. She anxiously retreated a few steps and suddenly creased her brows, staring fiercely at Yiqing Luo. But the current Yiqing Luo had already changed her expression. "Speaking of which, I'm also very overbearing. It's always me who bullies others. If others retaliate, I absolutely won't be polite." Yiqing Luo smiled incomparably enchanting, her charming eyes curved. The arc was narrow and charming. Chapter 1976. The crowd stared at the altar with sparkling eyes at the spirited young lady. Oh my! This was too cool, wasn't it? He was so handsome that their hearts couldn't stop thumping violently. Jing Yanyan's eyes were gloomy, the anger in her heart had reached its peak at this moment. She opened her arms wide and the long sword on her back was unsheathed from the sheath. That sword was shrouded in a layer of extremely thick black qi. Obviously, it had been processed by the dark forces. The long sword was extremely long, like thin ice, shining with a biting cold chill. The long sword circled a few rounds in midair. The black qi was like a poisonous snake, chasing after the long sword. That is 10 Scenery's sex treasure, Scenic Light Sword. Scenic Light Sword. It's actually Scenic Light Sword. Sect head Shi Jing is trying to kill Yiqing Luo, trying to take her life. Too despicable. Yiqing Luo is just a 15-year-old young lady. 10 Scenery's sex head is stronger than Yiqing Luo, and even took out the sex treasure. What number 1 sect? Pfft. When the crowd saw that long sword, they started to ridicule. Some of them saw that black qi, and the contempt in their eyes grew even deeper. The most despicable thing is, 10 Scenery's sect's head actually borrowed the power of the profound Yin qi. How unconfident is she in herself, to actually come up with such a despicable idea? The so-called number 1 sect really makes me laugh my teeth off. Too disgusting. 10 Scenery's sect, get out of the Nirvana realm. 10 Scenery's sect, get out of the Nirvana realm. A slogan was shouted. At that moment, the commoners started to echo his sentiments. One after another, the deafening slogan resounded throughout the West Lawn public square. On the altar, Jing Yanyan pointed at the scenic light sword, her eyes were filled with a sinister chill. She snorted coldly, "Yiqing Luo, today I will do justice on behalf of heaven, and take care of this calamitous demoness." Just as her voice fell, she had already leapt up, the scenic light sword in her hand, released a strong sword ray. Profound qi broke out of her body, and the sky was filled with endless sword rays. The earth shook, and between heaven and earth, thunder roared. When this valiant heaven-shaking power was revealed, the people who were shouting stopped one after another. Their eyes were filled with shock as they came into close contact with this powerful, profound energy. They were just a bunch of ordinary people. They couldn't withstand such pressure at all. The commoners clutched their hearts and fell to the ground weakly. As for Jing Yanyan's sword aura, it was still growing. The people in the surroundings were affected more and more. At this moment, suddenly, a thin layer of profound energy enveloped the altar. The celestial chi gradually formed a barrier that enveloped the entire altar. It also forcibly separated the sword chi released by Jing Yanyan from the commoners. Without the erosion of the profound energy, the citizens could finally breathe in fresh air again, and the squeezing of their internal organs also gradually eased up. It's the Mu family. The people's eyes were sharp, and they saw a few people sitting cross-legged at the edge of the altar, maintaining the barrier. It was none other than the Mu family. Those with higher profound ranks were all sitting beside the altar, exhausting their profound energy to fight for the greatest protection for the people. The people didn't even have time to praise the actions of the Mu family. Suddenly, they heard Wolf Saint Technique's icy cold voice rang, "Do it! Annihilate this bunch of traitors in the West Lawn continent. Ruling over the West Lawn continent is our first step." The next moment, the remaining evil people dressed in black robes surged in from all directions. As well as various forces troops, surrounded them. Star. Chapter 1977. Royal Army. We pledge our lives to protect the safety of the citizens, to protect the West Continent. Ling Fengning was unfazed as his extremely authoritative voice reverberated in the air. "You are the strongest army in our West Continent, the strongest army stationed in the West Continent. You are the heroes of the West Continent. Today, in order to protect the peace of the West Continent, to protect the safety of the citizens, we shall banish this bunch of rebels and traitors from the West Continent." This batch of royal army was the strongest army trained by the West Continent's royal family. And the Tiger Tally which mobilized the royal army had always been guarded by the third-generation veteran. For so many years, no matter who it was, no one was able to obtain this Tiger Tally from the third-generation veteran. Even the late monarch was the same. But now, the third-generation veteran personally handed over the Tiger Tally to Ling Fengning and supported him to become the new monarch. It was enough to show the position of the new monarch in the hearts of the third-generation veteran. The royal army's eyes were resolute as they gripped the weapons in their hands tightly. Protect the West Continent. Protect the safety of the citizens. Fight! We are the West Continent's royal army. Our mission is to protect the West Continent. Protect the citizens. Fight! 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 The soldiers were filled with boiling hot blood. They faced the dark forces and other forces as they swarmed forward. The soldiers from both sides quickly tangled together. A huge battle was about to break out. This was a war to protect the peace, to protect their homeland. Even the commoners had their blood ignited by the soldiers' passion. Countless people volunteered to join the battle with their own hands. Even if their strength was insignificant. Even though the dark forces they were facing could easily take their lives, they did not give up. But they were still fearless. Thousands of citizens joined the battle. This made the morale of the royal army greatly boosted. As a soldier, the most touching thing was that the people whom they were protecting could respect and understand them. The citizens risked their lives to protect them. How would the royal army bear to let the citizens get hurt? Hence, the citizens who risked their lives to protect their own abilities had a huge increase. One soldier and one citizen, such a combination, after a long time, the royal army obviously gained the upper hand. Wolf Xingfa squinted his sinister eyes as he looked coldly at the two armies who were locked in battle. A hint of mockery flashed across his eyes. Then, he raised his eyes and looked at the two people fighting on the altar. The 10 Views sect master Jing Yanyan was specially invited to entangle Yiqing Luo. The Wolf Saint technique had witnessed Yiqing Luo's prowess. He didn't expect Jing Yanyan to be able to kill Yiqing Luo. As long as he entangled Yiqing Luo, he would entangle her till she was unable to make a move and disrupt the battlefield. Then, he would definitely win this battle. The West Continent would belong to the Dark Forces. At that time, he would control the Dark Forces and become the next King of Darkness. Wolf Xingfa's eyes shone with ambition. His gaze shifted as he looked at the people beside him. The other 3 holy techniques and 4 pharaohs understood and joined the battle. As for Yi Fingru and the Shangguan clan head, they rushed into the battlefield without hesitation and started a brutal massacre. Smoke rose in all directions, and the smell of blood spread across the entire continent. On the altar, Yiqing Luo, who had exchanged over 10 moves with Jing Yanyan, had been paying close attention to the battle outside the enchantment. Chapter 1978. Yiqing Luo's heart was faintly flustered. She frowned slightly as the glower flame fan in her hand swept up a vast profound energy, opening up a path. Following that, she leaped up, attempting to escape Jing Yanyan's attack range, heading towards the battlefield. But before she could move, a surging sword ray blocked Yiqing Luo's path. Jing Yanyan held the scenic light sword tightly as she struck out a swift and fierce sword move. The altar shook, and numerous cracks appeared on it. Trying to leave. Jing Yanyan sneered as she raised another sword wave and changed her sword move. Damn it! Yiqing Luo bit her lower lip as she swiftly retreated backwards, avoiding Jing Yanyan's long sword. The glower flame fan opened up as a red cold ray flickered and the sharp blade collided heavily with the long sword. Clang! The profound ray exploded as both of them retreated at the same time. The 2 of them stood on both sides of the altar as their gazes met, their battle intent rising. After dozens of moves, Jing Yanyan no longer dared to let down her guard against Yiqing Luo. This 15-year-old young lady's ability was actually on par with hers. No wonder her proud disciple would be defeated in Yiqing Luo's hands. No wonder Wolf Saint technique specially invited her twice, offering such tempting conditions to get her to take action in order to deal with Yiqing Luo. If this young lady wasn't eliminated, she would become a huge trouble. Thinking of this, the ruthlessness in Jing Yanyan's eyes grew more intense. Yiqing Luo clenched the glower flame fan tightly as she pursed her pink lips, her expression congealed. She could tell what Wolf Saint technique's motive was for finding sect master Shijing. Wolf Saint technique's motive was pretty close to the mark. But in the current situation, she was entangled by Jing Yanyan and had no way to help the royal army. Yiqing Luo, why don't we have a bet? Will you and I be the first to decide the winner, or your royal army die in the battlefield first? Jing Yanyan's eyes were filled with murderous intent as her lips curled into a vicious arc. The sword wave in her hand flew over once again. Yiqing Luo's body floated in midair as the glower flame fan trembled, like a blooming gorgeous flower, shooting out sharp silver threads, entangling in all directions. Sect leader Shijing is really confident. Yiqing Luo's 5 fingers tightened as she tugged on a few strands of silver thread, flicking them on her fingertips, like a sharp blade reaping human lives. Holding the scenic light sword, bullying the weak, if you were to lose to a junior like me, I don't know if 10 scenery can still maintain the reputation of being the #1 sect. Jing Yanyan's pupils shrank. She gritted her teeth and a terrifying aura burst out from her body. The sword moves became even more complicated and difficult to break. Carrying the majestic profound energy, it surged towards Yiqing Luo. The silver thread and the sword ray collided again. Yiqing Luo swiftly retreated a few steps. However, this time, when Yiqing Luo retreated to a safe place, Jing Yanyan's figure suddenly swayed. It was as swift as lightning as it split apart those few sharp silver wires, closing in on Yiqing Luo from the side. The long sword in his hand pointed straight at Yiqing Luo's heart. Jing Yanyan was able to become the sect master of the number 1 sect, and her strength was definitely not undeserved. His combat experience wasn't something an ordinary person could compare to. She knew very well that Yiqing Luo's speed was extremely fast. If it was to compete with Yiqing Luo's speed, she probably couldn't even touch the corner of Yiqing Luo's clothes. But as long as she saw Yiqing Luo's habit of dodging. At the moment when Yiqing Luo evaded her attack, she attacked the direction where Yiqing Luo evaded. Then she could attack Yiqing Luo at close range. And Yiqing Luo would definitely not be able to react in time. In fact, Yiqing Luo indeed didn't expect that Jing Yanyan would take the risk and use such a method to attack her. She had already retreated extremely quickly. But it was still unavoidable. Jing Yanyan's long sword had scratched her shoulder. Chapter 1979. Yiqing Luo knitted her brows tightly and stabilized her body in pain. She glanced sideways at the injury on her shoulder. A long and thin blood scar was extremely obvious. No wonder it was the sex treasure. The power of the scenic light sword was too strong. Yiqing Luo's injury made Jing Yanyan's expression reveal an arrogant look. Sure enough, she guessed correctly. Yiqing Luo's speed was fast, but as long as one knew Yiqing Luo's habit of dodging, she could easily subdue Yiqing Luo. Jing Yanyan's self-confident sword. Her 5 fingers gripped the scenic light sword tightly as it slashed towards Yiqing Luo's face once again. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips, the expression in her eyes revealed a trace of interest. Yiqing Luo, go to hell. Jing Yanyan's long sword slashed downwards as she spat out these words fiercely. Yiqing Luo's lips curled up slightly as her body suddenly flipped over. The fiery long dress fluttered. The glower flame fan in her hands burst out with profound energy. The coquettish red glow set off the fiery long dress. It set off Yiqing Luo's gorgeous face, like a blooming rose in the night, exuding an intoxicating charm. Jing Yanyan's cold eyes dimmed. Honey trap is useless against me. She scoffed lightly, disdaining Yiqing Luo for trying to use a honey trap at this juncture. She was a woman, not a man. Towards Yiqing Luo's face which exuded a fatal temptation. She would not have any tender feelings for the fairer sex. Honey trap. Don't disgust me, facing your face, I can't use a honey trap. Yiqing Luo smiled sweetly as her pink lips curled into a strange arc. The next moment, Yiqing Luo's feather fan flipped. A red ribbon shot out from her sleeves. That red ribbon was like a burning fire dragon. Yiqing Luo opened her glower flame fan at the same time as her profound qi burst out. The hurricane was released from the glower flame fan and instantly split Jing Yanyan's sword attack, wrapping Jing Yanyan within it. Insignificant skill. Jing Yanyan reprimanded as her cold eyes swept across the incoming hurricane and red ribbon. Her long sword moved, and her sword moves were swift and fierce, unstoppable. In just a moment, the layer of red silk covering his body was split into pieces. The red silk cloth was scattered on the horizon. Jing Yanyan puffed out her chest arrogantly, her expression was complacent. Yiqing Luo, just based on you and you want to compete with this sect master. You overestimate yourself. As soon as he finished speaking, Jing Yanyan felt a chill down her spine. A sweet voice drifted into his ears, is that so? Sect leader Shijing, what a pity. I've learned that diversion tactic of yours. Jing Yanyan's expression turned cold as she used her fastest speed to avoid Yiqing Luo's attack range. She was shocked by Yiqing Luo's reaction and her astonishing speed. He had to admit it. This Yiqing Luo's innate talent was much stronger than the genius Yiqing Jian. Back then, why did she fall for that trash Yiqing Qian? Instead, they neglected the true geniuses. However, Jing Yanyan did not have the chance to regret now. No matter what, she was a direct disciple of the Ten Scenery sect, so she absolutely could not allow outsiders to bully her. Hiss, the sound of clothes tearing was heard. Jing Yanyan's clothes on her shoulder was torn apart. She was shocked and quickly lifted the brilliant light sword to counterattack her shoulder. Clang clang, the brilliant light sword slashed across the air, bursting out a strong ray of light. Jing Yanyan then discovered that it was the silver thread in Yiqing Luo's glower flame fan that tore her clothes. Chapter 1980. A strand of silver thread, when Jing Yanyan's long sword was being restrained. Suddenly, a streak of blood was drawn on her shoulder. Fresh blood gushed out and instantly dyed her plain robe red. Jing Yanyan felt the pain and her sword moves became increasingly fierce. Under the rage, her profound energy surged in this instant. Under the surge, it shook off the restraining silver thread. The next moment, Jing Yanyan charged towards Yiqing Luo's direction. However, Jing Yanyan's long sword was just about to approach. Yiqing Luo's figure suddenly disappeared into the air. Jing Yanyan's long sword paused and released her perception as she scanned the surroundings vigilantly. Giggle giggle, a burst of sweet and clear laughter was heard leisurely. Jing Yanyan immediately turned around and looked towards the direction of the sound. She saw Yiqing Luo standing at a place at least 20 steps away from her, smiling charmingly. I have always been a vengeful person, even if you hurt me, I have to pay it back. She took out a handkerchief with her slender fingers and gently wiped away the blood that had seeped out from her shoulder. The expression on her face was calm and enchanting. Jing Yanyan tightened her grip on the brilliant light sword. This woman was really amazing. Just like what she said, she was a vengeful person. If she couldn't kill her today, then she would definitely take revenge for today's hatred. Jing Yanyan's eyes were piercingly cold, bursting out a strong murderous intent. What a vengeful person, I want to see what kind of life you still have, vengeful person. Jing Yanyan was already full of energy, her own profound energy, also erupted to the extreme. The brilliant light sword in her hand, the sword moves, became more and more aggressive. Every move and every style, like a surging wave. The surrounding air seemed to be affected by the profound energy as it formed a distorted vortex of nothingness. This time, Yiqing Luo didn't dare to be too unrestrained. Jing Yanyan's profound grade was originally above her. Moreover, the current her, without the tranquil pearl, had no way to forcibly raise her profound grade, to compete with her. After a few more moves, Yiqing Luo could only rely on her own footwork to avoid Jing Yanyan's attack. Moreover, every time she dodged, she had to change the angle. After a long time, Yiqing Luo also felt that it was rather strenuous. Jing Yanyan's eyes lit up, and the attacks in her hands increased explosively in an instant. Seeing Jing Yanyan's sword aura slashing towards him again, Yiqing Luo had no way to resist against such a powerful force. He could only use his footwork to quickly move away. She gathered her spirit and sensed the changes in the air around her vigilantly. Then, he moved and stood behind Jing Yanyan in an instant. She gripped the glowing flame fan tightly and decisively moved it towards Jing Yanyan's neck. It was also at this moment. The gourd flame fan was only half a palm away from Jing Yanyan. Jing Yanyan suddenly regained her senses as she raised her palm and struck Yiqing Luo's chest. Then, a powerful sword aura came crashing down. Yiqing Luo felt a sharp pain in her chest as her body was forced to fly out. When Xiao Chen managed to stabilize his footing with much difficulty, countless swords followed closely behind. Damn it! This Jing Yanyan actually saw through her footwork once again. Yiqing Luo's expression was grave, her half-squinted eyes reflected a cold glint. At this moment, Yiqing Luo had no time to use her footwork to escape. The speed of the sword's shadows was extremely fast, giving her no chance to react. Yi Qing Luo, run. Aren't you very good at running? Jing Yanyan sneered and ridiculed. From what she thought, Yi Qing Luo was definitely going to die under her sword move. At this moment, Yi Qing Luo's mental power was concentrated on the sword shadows, star. Chapter 1981. Since he couldn't hide, he could only face it head-on. Her strength was indeed inferior to Jing Yanyan's. If he were to forcefully resist these sword shadows, even if he did not die, he would be crippled. This was probably what Jing Yanyan was planning. But, what Jing Yanyan did not know, she still had her golden finger. She could even cheat. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her long and narrow eyes as her lips curled into a cold arc, which was extremely bewitching and flirtatious. In that instant, Yi Shiwen's expression changed. Her fingers quickly stroked the azure water divine weapon on her fingertips. Her fingertips curled into a thin red line, and she quickly covered her neck with it. When the dark force was injected into the divine weapon, Yi Qing Luo only felt her petite body trembling violently. A horrifying power instantly eroded her body and mind. It was as if something was slowly penetrating and spreading through her limbs and bones. Bang! A powerful ray of profound light shot out from her body. It collided heavily with the hard attack that was coming at it head-on. They had just collided. That sword shadow instantly vanished into thin air. Jing Yanyan's proud smile froze on her face. What replaced it was disbelief and shock, as well as panic and shock. Because, after defeating the sword shadow, the profound light shot towards Jing Yanyan like lightning. Whereas at this moment, Yi Qing Luo's eyes were still shut, as though she didn't know what was happening in front of her. The azure water ring on his fingertip emitted a scorching heat. The azure aqua silk chain around his neck emitted a scorching heat. The two forces were constantly crossing each other. Yi Qing Luo could clearly sense the two forces colliding within her body. The earth quaked and the mountain swayed, and the altar beneath their feet actually shattered. The heaven and earth's spiritual qi seemed to be lingering around Yi Qing Luo's body, revolving continuously. That's a divine artifact. It's actually a divine artifact. Among the people fighting below, someone let out a cry of surprise. This voice made Yi Qing Luo abruptly open her eyes. A powerful red profound light engulfed her entire body. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared once more. But Yi Qing Luo's majestic imposing manner remained on her. She squinted her eyes and looked in the direction of the surprised roar. Unknowingly, the situation of the two armies that were fighting had turned around. It turned out that the various forces in the West Continent which were previously controlled by Yi Qing Qian and Yi Qing, had all brought their own forces and rushed over, joining in the battle to protect the West Continent. Because of this, those various powerhouses could tell at one glance that the red profound glow emitting from Yi Qing Luo's fingertip was the god relic which Yi Qing Luo had obtained that day in King Ling's tomb. Divine weapon. When Jing Yanyan heard that, she covered the injury which was struck by that profound ray earlier, as she stared gloomily at Yi Qing Luo, despicable. To actually use the power of a divine artifact. No wonder Yi Qing Luo was able to defeat her sword moves. No wonder Yi Qing Luo's imposing manner had taken a qualitative leap in an instant. That was the power of a divine artifact. Jing Yanyan's eyes revealed greed. This divine artifact should belong to her. Yi Qing Luo's gaze had already fallen onto Jing Yanyan and naturally did not miss that smear of greed in her eyes. Yi Qing Luo's lips twitched slightly. Did she think that a godly weapon was something that anyone could possess? She wants to get a divine artifact. The arc on Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into a sliver of ridicule. She leapt up and floated in mid-air. Her skirt fluttered, as though it was a blazing flame. Her arm lifted up slightly and the glower flame fan opened up on her fingertips. Chapter 1982. That clear voice in Jing Yanyan's ears was like an ice blade, piercing her eardrums. Jing Yanyan staggered back a few steps, her eyes staring at Yiqing Luo without blinking, her heart tightened into a ball. The young lady floated in mid-air, a head of fine hair, scattered on her shoulders, swaying with the wind. She was like a fairy from the ninth heaven, shrouded in dazzling brilliance, looking down on all living beings. Every smile and frown seemed to be brilliant, making one unable to blaspheme. That was the power of a divine relic. Jing Yanyan was filled with shock. Yiqing Luo looked down at Jing Yanyan, seeing the greed and fear in her eyes, her lips curled into a sweet smile. Those who offend me, I will kill them at the ends of the earth. She threw the glower flame fan into the air. The glower flame fan rotated rapidly in mid-air and suddenly opened up. Like a ball of tiny flame, with a whoosh, it burned into a raging flame. Yiqing Luo's figure swayed, her slender white hand raised up, steadily catching the glower flame fan. Soon after, a wind blade that was like thousands of giant waves was fiercely slashed out. Yiqing Luo's body was also surrounded by a circle of vortex qi. One circle after another, incomparably powerful, and all the other auras in the surroundings were isolated. Jing Yanyan quickly wielded her long sword, stirring up numerous waves. The sword momentum was fierce, not willing to fall behind, facing the wind blade released by Yiqing Luo, slashing down horizontally. Immediately, her sword move changed, she was already close to Yiqing Luo, the long sword pointed straight at Yiqing Luo's eyebrows. Yiqing Luo's lips revealed a smirk of evil cold arc slightly squinted long eyes, flashing with an interesting luster. She didn't dodge, but stared fixedly at the long sword pointing at her eyebrows, without blinking. Yiqing Luo's confidence made Jing Yanyan's heart, unknowingly, rise up a sense of fear. The long sword that was brandished also lost some of its momentum. This couldn't be another new trick of Yiqing Luo's. Jing Yanyan originally had absolute confidence. Her sword momentum, Yiqing Luo absolutely had no way to avoid, and could only choose to forcibly resist. And she was also prepared to make a move on Yiqing Luo while Yiqing Luo was resisting. No matter what, he could not allow Yiqing Luo to use the power of the divine relic. Otherwise, she would definitely be no match for a divine artifact. But Yiqing Luo's complacent look really made Jing Yanyan's heart beat like a drum. Jing Yanyan looked at Yiqing Luo suspiciously, trying to find a clue from her expression. But when Jing Yanyan met with Yiqing Luo's ridiculing gaze, his heart exploded like a volcano erupting. Jing Yanyan's gaze turned cold. Her wrist moved, and she gripped the bright light sword tightly. "You're deliberately mystifying things to scare me." She scoffed coldly, her gaze sharp as a blade. "I've never been afraid of anything. A little girl like you wants to scare this sect leader." As she spoke, Jing Yanyan's own profound strength soared extremely violently. It was as if he had gathered all his dark force on the sword. The vast and boundless sword force was like a hot knife cutting through butter, directly charging towards Yiqing Luo's glabella, stabbing towards it forcefully. The surrounding commoners had been paying attention to the battle in the field. When they saw Yiqing Luo about to be stabbed by Jing Yanyan's long sword, they all cried out in shock. There were quite a number of commoners, who were anxious to rush up the stage, to help Yiqing Luo block this sword. However, then, a scene that astonished everyone happened. Just as the bright light sword was about a fist's distance away from Yiqing Luo's glabella, suddenly, bright light sword's strong charge seemed to have met with some obstruction, as it came to a halt. Star. Chapter 1983. Jing Yanyan's expression congealed. She clenched her teeth and used all her strength to stab forward. But there seemed to be a membrane in the air. No matter how hard Jing Yanyan tried, the scenic light sword didn't budge at all. It couldn't get close to Yi Qing Luo at all. How was that possible? Yi Qing Luo's surroundings didn't have any enchantment, so how could the scenic light sword not hurt her? Jing Yanyan's eyes were filled with astonishment as she couldn't figure it out. Yi Qing Luo was all smiles, her eyes curved as she looked at Jing Yanyan, who was close at hand. Sect Master Shijing, it's a good thing not to be afraid, this way. It's interesting when I play with my prey, isn't it? No, impossible. What sorcery did you use? Jing Yanyan's chest heaved up and down violently. When she met Yi Qing Luo's smiling eyes, she instinctively wanted to retreat. But Jing Yanyan's hand, which was holding the long sword, had yet to withdraw. Suddenly, she saw Yi Qing Luo's body, shooting out a ray of red light. Like an avalanche, it rushed towards the scenic light sword, which was pointed between her eyebrows. Ka-cha! There was a crisp sound of something breaking. The scenic light sword in Jing Yanyan's hand broke into two. The broken blade fell down, landing on the ruins of the gravel. Jing Yanyan's pupils suddenly constricted, her eyes stared unblinkingly at the sword in her hand, which was left with half a long sword. Her petite body was trembling slightly. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. Broken. Her scenic light sword broke. 10 Scenery sect treasure, broken. This was the inherited sword of every sect master of 10 Scenery sect. Today, it was broken in her hands. No. Impossible. How could the sect treasure be broken? This must be Yi Qing Luo's sorcery. Jing Yanyan's eyes immediately turned red. She stared fiercely at Yi Qing Luo, her murderous intent burst out, "Slut! It's you. It's your sorcery, trying to deceive my eyes. Quickly hand over the scenic light sword. Hand over the scenic light sword." Her hand, which was holding the scenic light sword, kept trembling. Her entire body stiffened, showing a state of madness. How could the sect treasure of 10 Scenery sect be broken? Even if it was a divine weapon, it wouldn't be broken. There was no way it would break. Jing Yanyan fiercely pounced towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Her sharp shriek was extremely ear-piercing. "Slut! Hand over the bright light sword. Hand it over." However, before Jing Yanyan could get close, an invisible stream of air bounced her off the ground. Jing Yanyan tumbled down from the air and landed on the ground. That was profound energy. The flow of profound qi encircled Yi Qing Luo's body. It formed a protective shield for Yi Qing Luo. Earlier, Scenic Light Sword was unable to get close to Yi Qing Luo because it was obstructed by this protective shield. She was just a 15-year-old girl. How could she possibly possess such a powerful flow of profound energy? Even if he borrowed the power of a divine artifact. Even so, it was impossible to raise her profound rank. Jing Yanyan's eyes were filled with terror as she stared unblinkingly at Yi Qing Luo's smiling face. Wait a minute, Mystic Class. Yes, Mystic Class. From the beginning to the end, she had not been able to see through Yi Qing Luo's profound grade. The thoughts he got from Yi Qing Qian. Jing Yanyan had always thought that Yi Qing Luo was at most Earth profound 5th grade. And the reason why Yi Qing Luo was able to exchange so many blows with her was because she had many magical weapons. The Overlord gifted her the Glower Flame Fan, and Yi Qing Luo herself was an alchemist and so on. But she had never thought deeply about what level Yi Qing Luo's profound grade was at. Chapter 1984. As the sect master of 10 Views, she had the best resources since childhood. At the age of 60, she had finally stepped into the Sky Mystic realm and became a Sky Mystic Supremacy. Because she was a sky mystic supremacy. For many years, no one dared to find trouble with 10 views. And it had been sitting steadily on the throne of the #1 sect. But now, she had suffered such a big loss in the hands of a 15-year-old girl. How could this girl be a Earth Mystic 5th grade cultivator? Could it be that Yiqing Luo was also a sky mystic supremacy? No. Absolutely impossible. A 15-year-old sky mystic supremacy. Who would believe it? Even the Overlord couldn't possibly reach the sky mystic realm at the age of 15, right? Jing Yanyan couldn't believe it as she propped herself up on the ground and stared at the girl in midair. She would rather believe that the reason why Yiqing Luo could possess such great power was because of the divine weapon. She absolutely wouldn't believe that Yiqing Luo was a sky mystic supremacy. Sect Master 10 views, the brilliant light sword has been broken. If you still insist on going about things the wrong way, don't blame me for not knowing how to respect the elderly. Yiqing Luo raised her pink lips, under the glow of the glower flame fan. Her charming eyes were covered with a layer of fiery red glow, adding some flirtatious and bewitching charm to her stunning looks. Elderly. These 3 words stung Jing Yanyan's ears. Which woman didn't want to be talked about the problem of appearance in age? Even Jing Yanyan, who had always dressed like a Taoist nun, attached great importance to her appearance. Otherwise, she wouldn't have specially used profound energy to maintain her appearance as a 30 or 40-year-old woman. If it wasn't because she was the sect master, she had to be older in order to convince the masses. Otherwise, Jing Yanyan would definitely maintain her appearance as a 17 or 18-year-old. Arrogant silly girl, don't you dare be arrogant. Jing Yanyan clenched her teeth as she gripped the sword hilt in her hand and attacked Yiqing Luo relentlessly. The broken brilliant light sword was like a dead object. No matter how Jing Yanyan released her profound energy, the brilliant light sword had no reaction at all. Jing Yanyan's fingers clenched tightly as her red eyes stared at the sword hilt in her hand. Even now, she still could not accept it. Her scenic light sword had really been broken by Yiqing Luo's profound qi airflow. Ah! Ah! Jing Yanyan no longer had any thoughts to attack Yiqing Luo. Hugging half of the scenic light sword, she half knelt on the ground and let out a heart-wrenching roar. The scenic light sword represented the lifeline of the 10 sceneries. Now that the scenic light sword had been destroyed, she had become the sinner of the 10 sceneries. How could Jing Yanyan's heart calm down? Girl, take advantage of this opportunity to take down the 10 scenery sect master. Old man Song transmitted his thoughts in his mind. Yiqing Luo half squinted her eyes as she gazed at the woman who was howling hoarsely. Her eyes were as calm as still water. As for Jing Yanyan's heart-wrenching, he did not feel anything at all. Hearing old man Song's words, her eyelashes fluttered. You still haven't obtained the calming bead. The power of the divine artifact won't be able to last for too long. You have to end this quickly. Old man Song saw that Yiqing Luo still had no reaction as he advised in a deep voice. After dealing with the 10 scenery sect master, you still have to deal with the dark forces, so don't waste your energy in vain. Yiqing Luo nodded slightly. I know. Yes, she couldn't sustain the power of the divine artifact for too long. Because of this, the profound jade heart would faintly riot. If it wasn't for the jade pendant which Dmo Xian found for her, which suppressed the agitation of the profound jade heart, she would probably have been devoured by the profound jade heart by now. Star. Chapter 1985. The only way to deal with Jing Yanyan was to start with the scenic light sword. Because of this, Yiqing Luo exhausted the power of the divine relic and broke the scenic light sword. Exhausting the power of the divine relic was equivalent to exhausting Yiqing Luo's own profound energy. Breaking the scenic light sword almost exhausted half of Yiqing Luo's power. The current Yiqing Luo, with the power of the divine relic, could not hold on for too long. if she did not end the battle quickly. The pendant on her neck would forcibly suppress the power of her profound jade heart. Once the power of the profound jade heart was suppressed, the power of the divine relic would also diminish. Before this, what she needed to do was not only to settle Jing Yanyan, but also the dark forces. She must win this battle. Otherwise, the West Continent would be destroyed. Three Springs Sect would also completely become a traitor party. Three Springs Sect was Yi Fengyu's. She had promised Yi Fengyu that she would hand the Three Springs Sect over to him. She must not destroy Three Springs Sect. Yi Qingluo's eyes turned cold, powerful profound energy lingered around her body. Streams of air turned into a huge whirlpool, as if it could swallow everything in the world. Sect Master Shijing, take your laughable scenic light sword and scram back to Shijing Sect. Yi Qingluo reprimanded, and immediately opened the glower flame fan, spewing out a thick and majestic profound qi. The profound qi in mid-air turned into a light arc. In a split second, the surrounding air seemed to distort. A wave overshadowed the sound, shaking the heavens and earth. The entire West Billow Square was plunged into the quaking of the earth and mountains. This was the power of the divine relic. This kind of terrifying and majestic profound qi. This kind of profound qi was enough to shock people. This was the power of the divine relic. Too terrifying, even if it was separated by the barrier of the Mu family. All of them could clearly feel the surging waves of air that came one after another. The entire square, both armies, were shocked by the profound qi that Yi Qingluo released at this moment. Jing Yanyan was still half kneeling on the ground, hearing Yi Qingluo's insolent rebuke. Her brows suddenly turned fierce, clenching her fists tightly. Her heart was filled with hatred towards Yi Qingluo. However, the hatred in her eyes had just covered her eyes. A powerful profound qi whizzed over. Jing Yanyan's pupils constricted, and she wanted to retreat. But her reaction was already too late. Bang! Majestic profound qi fell. The entire ground cracked into rubble and flew in all directions. Dust billowed, and everything was filled with a bloodthirsty and cold aura. Dead, dead. Miss Yi, sect leader Shijing, she's dead, right? I knew Miss Yi was the best. Long live Miss Yi. Long live Miss Yi. When the onlookers saw this, a look of joy appeared on their faces. As long as Yi Qingluo settled the 10 scenic sect master, the underground forces would lose a capable assistant. Yi Qingluo then joined the royal army. The dark forces would not be able to fight back. Just as everyone seemed to have seen a ray of hope, Yi Qingluo squinted her charming eyes, as she fixed her gaze on the direction where the smoke and dust were curling upwards. She frowned, her voice cold. Yi Fengru. My good second brother, could it be that because of your love for Zi Qianqian, you have already fallen in love with this old woman? Everyone was taken aback. Following that, their eyes widened, as they looked at that patch of smoke in disbelief. The smoke slowly dispersed, only to see Jing Yanyan lying on the ground, covered in blood. Blood had dyed her plain-colored long robe red, and below her was a river of blood. But Jing Yanyan was not dead yet. Her expression was sinister, as her features were distorted due to the pain. Standing in front of Jing Yanyan, the refined man holding the long sword had one hand behind his back, while the other was pointing towards Yi Qingluo's direction. Star. Chapter 1986. The man's sleeves fluttered, his white long robe was not stained by the blood rain. His expression was calm, as gentle as jade. His elegance was just like his name. There wasn't any sense of incompatibility. His black and white eyes stared at Yi Qingluo without blinking, his voice was calm. Seventh sister, as a member of the Three Springs sect, you should advance and retreat together with the Three Springs sect. But today, because of your own ambition, you went against the Three Springs sect. Not only did you become a traitor of the Three Springs sect, you even assisted the rebels to seize the imperial power. You have thrown the Three Springs sect's face. He enunciated each word with great force. His tone was filled with deep regret. Yi-Ching Luo was about to laugh at his shamelessness. This was the first time she saw Yi Fengru spouting nonsense in a serious manner. It was a novelty. She giggled as her eyes were filled with ridicule. Second brother's ability to lie through your teeth is really strong. The commoners were filled with righteous indignation as they echoed Yi-Ching Luo's words. Did he need to be so shameless? Didn't he want his face anymore? And the traitor of Three Springs sect. And the traitor. And throwing the Three Springs sect's face. You're obviously the one who threw the Three Springs sect's face, and even tarnished Three Springs sect's reputation as one of the four major sects. The real traitor was this so-called second young master of Three Springs sect. The real traitor was this so-called second young master of Three Springs sect. Was he bullying them for not being educated? Even if they hadn't been educated, they still understood the most basic etiquette and shame. Yi Fengru's long sword moved as he stared at Yi-Ching Luo and struck directly. Seventh sister, since you're so stubborn, then I can only put justice before family. His sword moves were not like Jing Yinyan's. His sword moves were without any fancy moves, completely aimed at the vital points. This kind of attack was fast and accurate. If it was an ordinary person, they wouldn't have the ability to react at all. But to Yi-Ching Luo, these sword moves were nothing. But Yi-Ching Luo was still rather surprised. Yi Fengru was not only a grandmaster alchemist, his sword skills were not bad. His Xian grade had also improved since the last time they fought in the Ling King tomb. Very few people could concoct medicine and cultivate at the same time. Suddenly, Yi-Ching Luo caught a glimpse of a strange glint flashing past his eyes. Yi-Ching Luo's heart shuddered as she immediately withdrew her hand and retracted her profound qi. Her footwork expanded and her figure disappeared in midair. Yi Fengru's long sword slashed down. Visible to the naked eye, a mass of white powder drifted in the air. Yi Fengru's expression froze, and his warm expression disappeared. He furrowed his brows and looked around vigilantly. Second brother is still as sinister as ever. You still want to take the opportunity to poison me? Have you forgotten the lesson from last time? Yi-Ching Luo's sweet laughter was heard coming from his back. Yi Fengru was startled. He immediately turned his head and retreated. Fixing his eyes on her, he saw Yi-Ching Luo standing not too far away from him with a face full of smiles, as her smile was filled with ridicule. Yi Fengru gripped his long sword tightly as he watched the poison powder he had painstakingly refined scatter in the wind. The rage in his eyes started to burn wantonly. Yi-Ching Luo's reaction was actually that fast. She actually managed to evade it before he used the poison. How could she have guessed his next move? Recalling the last time, in the Ling King tomb, he had tried to poison Yi-Ching Luo repeatedly. But Yi-Ching Luo easily evaded it. Whereas he had suffered Yi-Ching Luo's poison powder. That heart-wrenching pain. He absolutely wasn't willing to suffer it a second time. Star. Chapter 1987. Yi-Ching Luo had a panoramic view of Yi Fengru's expression. Her lips curled upwards and her smile became even more radiant. Second brother, do you know that there's always someone better out there? As a dark alchemist, your skill in alchemy is constantly improving, but even though I'm wholeheartedly cultivating my profound grade, I've never neglected alchemy. Looking at Yi Fengru's pale face as he took a few steps back, Yi-Ching Luo's curved brows looked extremely demonic. Yi Fengru relied on his identity as a dark alchemist. He wanted to take back the pain he had suffered the last time in the Ling King's tomb. But he neglected it. He wasn't the only one who had improved. You. Yi Fengru's fingers turned white as he gripped his sword tightly. His gloomy eyes were filled with an eerie chill. Yi Qingluo, your arrogance will make you die a tragic death sooner or later. He flipped the long sword, his eyes were cold as he waved the long sword again, profound qi burst out. Yi Qingluo shook her head with a chuckle as she easily raised her glower flame fan to block that sword. Second brother, you're too weak, I really don't want to waste time with you. She clicked her tongue as her vision went past Yi Fengru and landed somewhere. Immediately, the smile on her lips became even more scornful, but second brother, don't worry, you won't be too lonely. Her words had just ended when Yi Qingluo had already flown up and retreated a long distance backwards. Yi Fengru had used all his strength to slash towards Yi Qingluo. While contending against Yi Qingluo's glower flame fan, he had used up all his strength. And Yi Qingluo's sudden retreat. This caused Yi Fengru's body to become unsteady. His entire body staggered forward a few steps, and then heavily fell on his face. Yi Fengru's expression instantly turned gloomy. He climbed up from the ground and wanted to attack Yi Qingluo again. But the moment he turned around, his footsteps stopped. Behind him was a group of about 1,000 people dressed in blue mercenary group uniforms. Their bodies, front and back, were embroidered with an extremely conspicuous kill word with golden thread. Death God Mercenary Group. On the Mercenary Group Honor Roll, ranked third in the Gold Medal Mercenary Group Guild. The leader of the group was delicate and handsome, but he did not lose his dignity. He was the leader of Death God Mercenary Group, Nangong Firen. Firen, Yi Fengru's hand that was holding the long sword paused as he stared at Nangong Firen without blinking. Ru, how could you walk this path? Nangong Firen's face was filled with pain, and his voice was extremely hoarse. A small head popped out from behind him. Nangong Lin looked at Yi Fengru timidly and pursed her red lips. Big brother Ru. Why? Why did you abandon the Killing God mercenary group? Facing the brothers who had fought together with him. Facing the brothers who had gone through thick and thin with him. The expression on Yi Fengru's face gradually loosened. Why? His thin lips trembled as he gently spat out 3 words. Suddenly, he chuckled softly. You asked me why. Nangong Firen frowned and slowly closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she exhaled and said, You did it for Qianqian, didn't you? At the mention of Zi Qianqian's name, Yi Fengru's body trembled slightly. His gloomy eyes flashed with traces of madness and a faint wry smile. It's you who abandoned Qianqian. It's you who abandoned us. Qianqian colluded with the dark forces and attempted to destroy the entire Nirvana realm. She deserved to die. Nangong Firen's voice was cold as he said word by word, as the executive leader of the Death God mercenary group, you colluded with the dark forces and attempted to destroy the West Continent on behalf of the Three Springs sect. Do you really think that you only represent the Three Springs sect? Where do you put the Death God mercenary group and the brothers who have gone through thick and thin with you? Star. Chapter 1988. Yi Fengru was stunned as his eyes were in a trance. His gloomy eyes revealed endless hesitation. Yi Fengru. Don't forget what you've promised me. As long as you succeed, I will try my best to fulfill your conditions. Just at this moment, Wolf Saint Art's voice was heard. Yi Fengru raised his head as his body swayed slightly as he stared at Wolf Saint Art in a daze, looking helpless, as though he had not regained his senses from Nangong Firen's provocation. Ru, Azura is very pained towards Qianqian's death. I know you like Qianqian, but she's already dead. What you need to do is to look forward. Nangong Firen saw this and immediately increased his tone as he advised, don't continue to make mistakes. You still have Azura and us brothers. Before Nangong Firen could finish his words, Wolf Saint Art bellowed angrily again, Yi Fingru, think carefully about what you want the most. Want? Yi Fingru suddenly raised his head as a gloomy glint flashed past his eyes. He held the long sword in his hand tightly. I only want Qianqian alone forever. Qianqian died in Yiqing Luo's hands, so no matter what, I must kill Yiqing Luo to take revenge for Qianqian. His voice turned cold like ice. Nangong Firen, if you insist on stopping me, then don't blame me for not caring about our brotherhood. Brother. Nangong Lin hugged Nangong Firen's arm. Her eyes were glistening with tears as she stared at Yi Fingru in a daze. Lin, be good and move aside. You can't mess around here. Nangong Firen knew his sister's intention. He forcefully pried Nangong Lin's hand away. I've given him a chance. Since he's willing to abandon his brothers for a woman, I have nothing to say. Lin, there are thousands of men in this world. I will find you a man who is better than him. Nangong Lin pursed her red lips tightly as her eyes filled with tears. She knew that everything her brother did was for the sake of the overall situation and for her. She knew that Yi Fingru had never liked her from the start and only treated her like a sister on account of Nangong Firen. But she liked Yi Fingru. She didn't want to see her brother and Brother Ru kill each other. Bai Lai! Nangong Firen shouted. Wei Bailey's expression was unfathomable. When Nangong Firen shouted for the second time, he walked out and grabbed Nangong Lin's wrist. Look after Lin, I'll stop the gnome. The other brothers, protect the West Wave continent. As soon as Nangong Firen gave the order, he flew forward and engaged Yi Fingru. Brother Ru. No matter how unwilling Nangong Lin was, she was still dragged to the back of the crowd by Wei Bailai. The mercenaries of the Death God mercenary troop received the order and immediately charged in the direction of the Dark Coalition. Move aside, Nangong Firen. I don't want to fight you today. Seeing that Yiqing Luo's figure had already dashed towards the battlefield, Yi Fengru gritted his teeth and wanted to chase up to her. However, in the next moment, Nangong Firen had already closed in on him. Nangong Firen's face was calm. He didn't use any weapons. He was bare-handed and only wanted to trap Yi Fingru. Yi Fingru's target was to stop Yiqing Luo from joining the battle. In that case, his target was to stop Yi Fingru from making mistakes again and again. Chapter 1989. Stupid. Jing Yanyan, who was lying on the ground, unable to move, sneered at Yiqing Luo's actions. Just like that, they attacked the place where the two armies were fighting without any hesitation. Wasn't she afraid of hurting her own army? Did Yiqing Luo really thought she was heaven-defying? She could control her own profound energy and had her own consciousness, not attacking the royal army. However, at the next moment, Jing Yanyan spat out a mouthful of blood in shock, only to see the sky full of airflow turning into several sharp wind blades. Wherever the wind blades went, the dark forces and 10 scenery sect's disciples were all slashed into several pieces by the wind blades. Whereas, the direction of the wind blades, coincidentally, it evaded the royal army completely. It didn't hurt the royal army at all. This scene made Wolf Saint Fa's brows crease tightly. Wolf Saint Fa. What should we do, with Yiqing Luo, that little slut, making a move? Together with those two sacred beasts, we won't be able to last more than 1 hour. After Butterfly Saint Fa evaded Yiqing Luo's wind blades, she flew towards Wolf Saint Fa's direction. She seductively wiped off the blood stains on her face filled with displeasure. Their Saint Fa had always been high and mighty, there was no need for them to do anything themselves. Today, everything was listening to Wolf Saint Fa's orders. 3 Saint Fa and 4 pharaohs all joined the battle. But Wolf Saint Fa just stood by the side and watched. If it wasn't for the fact that Wolf Saint Fa had an absolute trump card in his hands, they couldn't be bothered to take this vexation. Wolf Saint Fa glanced at Butterfly Saint Fa sinisterly and sneered, "What's the hurry? Just drag the time. No matter what, we will definitely win this battle." Looking at Wolf Saint Fa's confident look, Butterfly Saint Fa was filled with curiosity. "Wolf Saint Fa, what are you trying to hide? It's already so urgent. Can't you just say it out and boost everyone's morale? You don't believe in this Saint Fa?" Wolf Saint Fa's tone sunk, as though he was impatient. Butterfly Saint Fa pursed her lips as a sliver of unresigned anger flashed past her eyes. But very quickly, she suppressed that anger and revealed a smile. "Why wouldn't I believe you? If I don't believe you, why would we be charging forward here? Then cut the crap." Wolf Saint Law gave a cold snort, without the slightest bit of tenderness towards the fairer sex. "Those trash are unable to hold Yi Qing Luo back. The few of you, think of a way to hold her back. Otherwise, everything will be for naught." The Butterfly Saint technique clenched her fists. Since they had already come this far, they could only cling to the last straw of hope. Otherwise, in today's battle, even if they escaped from the Nirvana realm, they were afraid that even if they hurt Yi Qing Luo, they would not be able to escape the pursuit of the Overlord. Now that things had come to this, he could only believe in the Wolf Saint technique. The Butterfly Saint technique joined the battle once again, as it headed straight towards the target, Yi Qing Luo's direction. Die! Pharaoh Crane had been paying attention to the whereabouts of the Butterfly Sacred technique. When he saw her coming over, he immediately flashed to her side. "What did that wolf say to you?" "Butterfly Saint technique, delay Yi Qing Luo, otherwise all previous efforts will be wasted." Pharaoh Crane, he still hasn't said what his trump card is. Based on the current situation, who can control Yi Qing Luo? They had all crossed hands with Yi Qing Luo. Towards Yi Qing Luo's ability, they were clearer than anyone else. If they fought head-on, they might even lose their lives. Look at Yi Qing Qian. Then look at Sect Master Shijing. Sect Master Shijing and Yi Feng Ru were specially used by the Wolf Saint technique to hold Yi Qing Luo back. But they had all failed. They held Yi Qing Luo back. What were they going to use to hold her back? Especially now, Yi Qing Luo, who was using the power of the God Relic. He was simply unrivaled. Star. Chapter 1990. Butterfly Saint Technique's expression was gloomy as she stared fiercely at Yi Qing Qian, who was in a pool of blood and flesh behind the Wolf Saint Technique. "If it wasn't for that woman acting on her own, we wouldn't need to waste so much effort to delay Yi Qing Luo." Originally, Wolf Saint Law had already decided on a plan. But Yi Qing Qian, that woman, thought that she could cover the sky with one hand. Why must he go against Yi Qing Luo? Now, not only did he cause himself to suffer unspeakably, they even had to pay with their lives. Before they were tortured to death by Yi Qing Luo, Wolf Saint Technique had yet to reveal his trump card. What was the use of stalling for time? Pharaoh He and the Wolf Saint Mage were never on good terms. He especially loathed the useless women that the Wolf Saint Technique had brought back. Although that woman had the exact same appearance as the former Fox Saint Law. However, his temperament and strength were two extremes. Only the Wolf Saint Technique, who was infatuated with the Fox Saint Technique, would treat this similar-looking Yi Qing Qian as a treasure in the palm of his hand. Now, because of Yi Qing Qian, the strength of the dark forces was greatly reduced. What's more, it was very likely that they wouldn't be able to delay the Wolf Saint Law from taking out his trump card. How could they not be resentful? How could they not be angry? If not for the fact that they could only rely on the so-called trump card of the Wolf Saint Technique. They would absolutely disregard the wolf saint technique and strangle Yi Qing Qian to death. After Yi Qing Luo joined the battle, not only did it lessen the pressure on the royal army, it also boosted the morale of the royal army. Each and every one of them had an insane fighting prowess. Especially with the addition of the Death God mercenary group and other forces. The dark forces were gradually losing strength, and their combat power was getting lower and lower. Moreover, towards Yi Qing Luo, the dark forces had already developed an instinctive fear towards her. One had to know that this young lady was the one who had sealed the consciousness of their king of darkness. Kill these traitors. You are the kings of the Western continent. It contains our dark forces' holy techniques and dark secret arts. What was there to be afraid of? Kill. Kill. The wolf's sacred eye roared furiously when it saw that the morale of the dark faction was dropping. You have the noble bloodline of the dark forces. What pressure do you have to deal with these lowly humans from the mortal world? What did a 15-year-old girl have to fear? If one wasn't enough, then two would go. If two didn't work, then three. No matter how powerful she is, she can't fight against four people. And your Three Springs sect. You are one of the four major sections. Could it be that you can't even deal with the traitors of your own sect? What use do the Three Springs sect have for you? Look at your sect master. He's fighting for the Three Springs sect's peace. How long are you going to be afraid? The wolf saint technique enunciated each and every word clearly and sonorously. His dignified tone ignited the fighting spirit of the dark forces and other forces that were afraid of him once again. The wolf saint Dharma continued, don't forget, from the moment you stepped onto this path, you have no way out. You can only fight with your lives on the line. Kill all these traitors and rebels. The dark forces had already joined the dark forces in the Western continent, and at this time, they had no choice but to be on high alert to deal with the attack of the Imperial Army. Indeed, they had no way out. Once they did, they would lose to the Royal Army. In the annals of history, they would be labeled as rebels and traitors instead. They could not afford to lose this battle. Chapter 1991. That might not be the case, there's always a way out. Yi Qing Luo's sweet laughter reverberated in the air, which was filled with killing intent. The young lady suddenly left the battlefield and stood in the air. A captivating red long dress fluttered in the wind, like a blazing flame. Her red lips rose slightly as she looked down at the two armies who were fighting below. The entire West Lake Square had long been dyed red with blood and corpses littered the ground. She gradually concealed the smile in her eyes as her expression turned solemn. Her solemn voice floated in the air. All of you from Three Springs sect were bewitched and instigated by scoundrels, and also listened to that unjustifiable sect master's orders, which was why you joined the dark forces. Which allowed that unjustifiable person to attempt to make use of you, to clear his name as the sect master. And all of you knew that the dark forces were expelled by the Nirvana realm, but still endured the unwillingness in your hearts and chose to listen to the sect master's orders. That was enough to show your loyalty to Three Springs sect. Such loyal people are exactly the talents that I, Three Springs sect, need. Now I, the legitimate young matriarch of Three Springs sect for 15 years, is back. All of you can think clearly. Is it the unjustifiable sect master who could even lay a hand on his own father to forcefully obtain the sect master's position, who you are loyal to? Or are you loyal to me, the publicly acknowledged young matriarch for the past 15 years? The people from Three Springs sect were stunned, as their hearts started to waver. No matter who it was, they could tell that Yi Fengru's position was unjustifiable. Yi Qing Qian had obviously been chased out of Three Springs sect. But Yi Fengru and Yi Qing Qian collaborated, and even introduced the dark forces into Three Springs sect. Three Springs sect had been in the West Lake continent for as long as 10,000 years. The people from Three Springs sect were born and bred in the West Lake continent. Towards the West Lake continent, they naturally had feelings. The invasion of the dark forces, and the act of controlling the West Lake continent, wanting to invade the West Lake continent, had long made the people from Three Springs sect unhappy. Now, hearing Yi Qing Luo's words, how could they not waver? No matter who it was, they would not bear to have their names recorded in the annals of history as traitors. Since ancient times, although it is said that the victor is the king and the loser is the thief, the truth of the matter can never be completely erased. In today's battlefield, everyone should be clearer than anyone else in your hearts. Who are the rebels and traitors? Who are the traitors and enemies who want to invade and destroy the Western continent? Yi Qing Luo's voice was loud and clear, with the power of profound qi. It spread to the entire public square. This battle involves the survival of the Western continent. Do you want to see the West continent that you protect be invaded by a foreign force that has been expelled by the Nirvana realm, and become a lackey of a foreign force? Do you want to see the Western continent plunge into an abyss of suffering and all the common people become food for the dark forces? Do you want to completely destroy the West Wave continent, destroy the home that belongs to us? Each voice was more impassioned than the last, one louder than the other. Not only the people from Three Springs sect were convinced by Yi Qing Luo. Even the disciples of the other 10 scenery sects that had joined the dark forces were shaken. In the entire square, only the sounds of the dark forces fighting with the royal army could be heard. The other forces couldn't help but stop the attacks in their hands. They all raised their heads, looking at the young lady who was suspended in midair. She was obviously just a 15-year-old young lady, and on the surface, she looked so slender as though she would be blown away by the wind. But the aura that was emitted from her body, and that majestic imposing manner which made one submit to her, made one's heart feel solemn. Star. Chapter 1992. Everyone's heart was trembling. She was like a queen looking down on the world, leaving an indelible mark in the hearts of the crowd. That was right. Even if they weren't from the West continent, they didn't attach much importance to the survival of the West continent. But since ancient times, the winner was the king and the loser was the bandit. But the truth would never be buried. The truth that they were the real traitors would eventually be passed down to the future generations. What's more, the dark forces belonged to the dark forces. Would they really fulfill the promises they made? Once the dark forces invaded the West continent, then, wouldn't they have to take action against the other 3 continents? The West continent was definitely not the lowest among the 4 continents, but it was easily controlled by the dark forces. Then, what about the other 3 continents? Thinking of this, not only Three Springs sect's people were shaken. 10 Scenery's disciples and other small forces were shaken. Nonsense. Don't listen to that witch's nonsense. Yifengru's long sword slashed through Nangong Firen's obstruction as he charged forward, shouting at the top of his voice. At this moment, where was the slightest bit of elegance that he once had? Nangong Firen charged forward and tangled with Yifengru again. His blue mercenary uniform was stained with blood. It was obvious that Yifengru had never shown any mercy to him. However, Nangong Firen had not taken out his weapon from the start and had been entangling him with his bare fists. This scene fell into the Death God mercenary group's eyes and it made them gradually develop a resistance towards Yifengru. Although Yifengru, as the executive leader, had managed the team very well, it was still not enough. And he had won the hearts of the members. But at this very moment, seeing Yifengru treating his own brother in such a manner for a woman who had colluded with the dark forces, even going against the Death God mercenary group, they couldn't understand such feelings at all. Especially after hearing Yi Qing Luo's impassioned words. They couldn't understand Yifengru's actions. What's more, in order to cooperate with the dark forces, Yifengru was even ruthless to his own father. Clang! A sound of weapons clashing was heard. The Three Springs sect's people threw down their weapons. With one person taking the lead, more and more people threw down their weapons. After careful consideration, he finally chose to pledge allegiance to Yiqing Luo. They were not willing to cooperate with the dark forces. He also didn't want it to be passed down to the later generations and be cursed. Those who surrender will be killed without mercy. Lang Shengfei's expression was sinister. He had not expected Yiqing Luo to be so good at inciting people's hearts. Yi Fingru, that trash. He couldn't even control his own men. It was just a few words and it made Yiqing Luo waver. The dark forces obeyed the order and quickly turned towards the Three Springs sect's people who had dropped their weapons and lost their ability to fight. With us here, let's see how you're going to kill them. The Death God mercenary group held their weapons tightly and immediately stood in front of the Three Springs sect people. Long Yunzhan and Tong Ziqing also followed the sound and killed the dark forces that were charging at them one by one. Everyone of the Three Springs sect, this time, please pick up the weapons in your hands and protect our Western continent, our Three Springs sect. You will all be our Three Springs sect's heroes. I represent the Three Springs sect's young matriarch to promise everyone that after Three Springs sect has settled down, you will all receive Three Springs sect's medal. Chapter 1993. Yiqing Luo's words deeply shook the hearts of those from Three Springs sect. They succumbed to Yiqing Luo's charisma. Her ability. Her aura. Her dignified, and awe-inspiring boldness. All of which made the people from Three Springs sect succumb to her. This time, the people from Three Springs sect had at least lost 2/3 of their men. As for the remaining 1/3, they were Yi Fengru's only trusted aides after so many years in Three Springs sect. The people from Three Springs sect picked up their weapons once again. This time, they were protecting their homeland. To protect their West Continent. To protect the citizens of the West Continent. This time, they had nothing to fear. Whereas for the dark forces, because 2/3 of the people from Three Springs sect had switched sides, their ability dropped drastically. Coupled with Yiqing Luo's impassioned speech earlier. Many of the small forces on the Dark World side were also affected. For example, the people from the Shengguan family were affected the most. In just a short moment, the dark forces' ability was reduced step by step. As time passed, they were suppressed by the royal army until they retreated step by step. As for the few holy techniques and pharaohs, they were worried that they would be tortured by Yiqing Luo, so that they would lose their lives. So naturally they wouldn't risk their lives. Wolf Saint Technique was so angry that he kept shouting and cursing, pointing at the dark forces, warning them non-stop. However, the dark forces were still retreating step by step. Very soon, they had retreated to the boundary of the West Continent public square, converging towards Wolf Saint Technique's direction. The morale of the royal army was getting stronger and stronger. All of them pressed forward. Just at this moment, a flattering scream was heard from afar, Wolf Saint Technique, Wolf Saint Technique. Yen family is willing to help the dark forces. Yen family is willing to pledge allegiance to the dark forces. Then, a group of more than 1,000 people hurriedly ran over from afar. Those 1,000 people, in Wolf Saint Technique's eyes, were nothing. Especially when the royal army's morale was soaring. It was just a drop in the bucket. But Yen family's goodwill, Wolf Saint Technique naturally wouldn't reject it. As long as he could delay Yiqing Luo, until he could reveal his trump card, it was enough. As for these insignificant people, even if they sacrificed their lives, it was their honor to sacrifice their lives for him, Wolf Saint Law, the future ruler of the Nirvana realm. Patriarch Yen led all the people of his family and went forward to welcome them. All right. Good. Your choice is correct. As long as you can agree to this battle on my behalf, I will grant you a request. The Wolf Sacred Technique spoke calmly, its attitude extremely lofty. However, Patriarch Yen was beaming with joy as he pushed the young girl beside him towards the Wolf Saint technique. The Wolf Saint technique is wise and the Wolf Saint technique is mighty. This is my daughter who has admired the Wolf Saint technique for a long time. Today, my daughter wants to see the Wolf Saint technique. She wants me to bring my family to the Wolf Saint technique. The young girl was delicate and pretty. She looked no more than 14 or 15 years old, but she wore heavy makeup and deliberately put on a coy look. It really made the young girl's liveliness lose some color. The Wolf Saint technique didn't say a word, only raising his brows as he glanced sideways at the young girl who was pretending to be shy. This glance made Patriarch Yen even more excited as he took the opportunity to say, "If the Wolf Saint technique doesn't mind, after the battle ends, my daughter will stay by the Wolf Saint technique side to serve you." What does the Wolf Saint technique think about it? Wolf Saint technique, my name is Yen Jinfei. You can change to my Fei, Yen Jinfei lowered her head shyly as she twisted her body and said in a tender voice, "Fei has admired the Wolf Saint technique for a long time. I hope that the Wolf Saint technique can fulfill Fei's sincerity." Star. Chapter 1994. Wolf Saint Magic squinted his sinister eyes. He who was good at scheming naturally didn't miss the glint in the 14 to 15-year-old young lady's eyes. He laughed coldly in his heart. But on the surface, he revealed a humble expression. "I'm indebted to Miss Yan's kindness. If Miss Yan doesn't mind following this old man, I'm naturally willing to leave a message for Miss to accompany me." Patriarch Yan's expression turned joyful as he hurriedly pushed Yen Jinfei towards Wolf Saint Magic's direction. Yen Jinfei's footsteps seemed to be unstable as she cried out and fell towards Wolf Saint Magic. Wolf Saint Magic immediately stretched out his arm and wrapped it around Yen Jinfei's waist. 4 eyes met. Everything was formed in a flash. Patriarch Yen was filled with joy as he hurriedly called out to his own forces to join the Dark Forces army and start the battle. This was the Yen family's only chance to climb up. Pushing the daughter whom he had doted on for over 10 years over. Patriarch Yen was already giving it his all. Looking at his adorable daughter smiling shyly at the Wolf Saint Fa, Patriarch Yen felt a bit reluctant to part with her. After all, she was the daughter he had doted on for over 10 years. He wholeheartedly nurtured her, wanting her to marry into the royal family to raise Yen family status. Now, she could only be given to that old man who was almost 50 years old. In terms of age, Wolf Saint Magic was probably older than him by a few years. This time, their Yen family must grab hold of this opportunity. They must absolutely not let Fei's sacrifice go to waste. Some people were happy while others were worried. Yiqing Qian, who was thrown behind by Wolf Saint Magic, was still conscious. Yiqing Qian clearly saw the Yen family rushing to the battlefield. She clearly saw Yen Jinfei pretending to lean into Wolf Saint Magic's arms. She clearly heard Wolf Saint Magic wanting to keep Yen Jinfei by his side. She was so angry that her head was about to explode. That damned vixen. She actually seduced Wolf Saint Magic while she was seriously injured. The woman beside Wolf Saint Magic could only be her alone. Only she was the woman in Wolf Saint Magic's heart. Yen Jinfei, that vixen, how could she snatch Wolf Saint Magic away? Wolf Saint Magic. Wolf Saint Magic. Yiqing Qian pursed her lips unwillingly as she called out Wolf Saint Magic miserably. When Yen Jinfei heard the voice, she timidly raised her head and looked towards the direction of the voice. What she saw was a mass of flesh and blood, looking at her viciously. Yen Jinfei exclaimed in shock and shrank back. That lump of flesh and blood was so badly mangled that it was almost impossible to tell what it was. The only thing that could be seen clearly was the pair of venomous eyes. Yen Jinfei had grown up in the love of her parents. It was the first time he had seen a bloodbath on a battlefield. This was also the first time he had seen such a gaze. "Be careful, Miss Yen." Wolf Xingfa reached out and grabbed Yan Zhenfei's wrist. His powerful palm stabilized Yan Zhenfei's stumbling figure. Yan Zhenfei blushed slightly and lowered her eyelashes. She said softly, Thank you for the Wolf Saint technique." The Wolf Saint Law pulled her into his embrace and gently patted her slender back. "There's no need to be afraid. She's just an unimportant person. After the war is over, I'll deal with her." Yan Zhenfei's eyes were filled with joy. But when she thought about how she was still in Wolf Saint Fa's arms, she was immediately overwhelmed by embarrassment. She lowered her head and buried it in Holy Wolf's arms. In her eyes, there was a scheming look. Since her father had asked her to bewitch Wolf Saint magic, how could she possibly not know what that pile of flesh and blood was? A woman who had lost her looks and body. To her, it was not a threat at all. One could tell from Wolf Saint Magic's attitude towards Yi Qingqian. Chapter 1995. Hearing Wolf Saint Dharma's heartless words. The sinister glint in Yi Qingqian's eyes gradually dimmed. Her lips trembled as she wanted to go hysterical. But she didn't know what to shout about. From the start to the end, Wolf Saint Dharma had never turned back to look at her. Because her face, which was similar to Wolf Saint Dharma's, had been destroyed. So she had completely, no longer become the fox in Wolf Saint Dharma's heart, right? And this Yan Zhenfei was the second person to replace her. The more Yi Qingqian thought, the more hopeless she felt. So that in the end, she shut her eyes fiercely. She was filled with unwillingness and stubbornness. But she was powerless. She couldn't even move her own body. At this moment, Yi Qingqian finally understood the real reason why Yi Qingluo sent her back to Wolf Saint Dharma. This was the real torture for her. Yi Qingluo had long seen that Wolf Saint Dharma only cared about her face. Destroying her face was equivalent to destroying the bond between her and Wolf Saint Dharma. She who had lost Wolf Saint Dharma had no way to continue living. But how would she be willing to die under Yi Qingluo's schemes? Yi Qingluo was planning on this. Wanting her to seek death, there was nothing she could do. Making her feel unresigned, living in despair. Yen family's addition was indeed a drop in the bucket. But, at least there was another batch of people who were seeking death. The dark forces could also relax a little. After Yi Qingluo instigated most of them to change sides, she retreated to the back of the Mu family. Her face was slightly pale. That look made old Master Mu couldn't help but ask about her well-being. Mu Lai was even more concerned about Yi Qingluo's pulse. "Thank you everyone for your concern, I'm fine, just overused profound energy and a little tired." Yi Qingluo's lips curled as she shook her head. The reason why she chose to use the instigation method was because the power of the God Relic had been exhausted. She wanted to use the power of the God Relic to deal with Wolf Saint Dharma. But her current body couldn't hold on for too long. Her profound jade heart didn't allow her to expend too much of her energy. She needed to adjust the profound energy in her body before she could recover. The people of the Mu family didn't need to form a bounded domain. At this time, they could protect her and let her adjust her dark force. Approximately 2 incense sticks of time later, Yi Qingluo slowly opened her eyes. The situation of the battle was still the same. The royal army kept pushing back the dark forces. The main reason was that the soldiers of both sides had fought for too long and were somewhat exhausted. As a result, neither side was able to advance or force the other to take a step back. Seeing Yi Qingluo opening her eyes, Mu Xiao looked at her anxiously. "Lass, how do you feel?" "I have a high-grade pill that can heal internal injuries here." It was refined by a medicine ancestor ranked medicine master, and I've kept it for many years to save my life. Hurry up and eat it. As he spoke, Mu Xiao fished out a palm-sized wooden box from his interspatial ring. When the box was opened, there was a tiny pill lying inside. It was of faint golden color. This pill was indeed a high-grade pill, and it was worth 1,000 gold. How could Grandpa Mu be so generous to her, a person whom he just met? He even took out a life-saving pill. Yiqing Luo felt warm in her heart. She smiled as she shook her head and spoke in a warm voice, "I'm not injured, nor do I have any internal injuries. Thanks to Grandpa keeping watch for me. After resting for a while, I feel much better." Mu Xiao didn't believe her and insisted on checking Yiqing Luo's pulse. Chapter 1996. Upon checking her pulse, Mu Xiao's brows twitched. Yiqing Luo was indeed not injured. Her pulse was smooth, no different from an ordinary person. However, this kind of pulse made Mu Xiao even more suspicious. Even after resting for a period of time and adjusting the profound qi in her body, Yiqing Luo's complexion was still slightly pale. If her pulse was normal, why was her complexion so ugly? Apparently, Yiqing Luo was indeed not feeling well, and she intentionally stopped him from checking her pulse. Not waiting for Mu Xiao to voice out his suspicions, Yiqing Luo had already stood up and looked towards the direction of the battlefield. "Old Master Mu, this battle, the brothers are all tired, everyone should take a break." Mu Xiao was still guessing how serious Yiqing Luo's discomfort was. Suddenly hearing Yiqing Luo's question, he was stunned. "Marching to war, how can we rest just like that?" Before he finished his words, Yiqing Luo had already flew up, turning into a magnificent shadow as she headed towards the direction of the battlefield. Seeing Yiqing Luo's appearance, the Dark Forces army instinctively felt fear as they all raised their heads to look at her. They saw Yiqing Luo flying directly towards Wolf Saint Magic, and finally, she alone, passed over 10,000 Dark Forces army and stood in front of Wolf Saint Magic. Wolf Saint Magic's expression sunk as his 5 fingers suddenly clasped Yan Jinfei's shoulder tightly. He narrowed his long eyes as he looked coldly at Yiqing Luo. "You want to fight with me?" "Yes." Yiqing Luo's lips curled as she laughed wantonly. Since the two armies are locked in a fierce battle, as the two main characters who started the battle, you have to make a move no matter what, isn't it? Wolf Saint Magic scoffed. "Just based on you. Just based on me." Yiqing Luo continued to smile warmly. "Both armies will stop fighting and will fight. If you win, the West Continent will belong to your Dark Forces. If you lose, then the Dark Forces, scram out of Nirvana Realm. How about that?" Wolf Saint Magic's eyes were raging. "Why should I agree to that? Based on your self-confidence." Yiqing Luo raised her brows. "Don't tell me, Wolf Saint Magic is afraid that he can't match up to me?" As she spoke, she nodded in sudden realization. "That's true. Wolf Saint Law was defeated by me. Now, if he lost to me in front of his own subordinate, it would be even more embarrassing. No wonder you're afraid of me." After that, Yiqing Luo blinked her pure and innocent eyes as she smiled at the Wolf Saint technique. "The current battle situation is very obvious. If I were to take action, the royal family's army would obtain victory in less than half an incense's time. But you, if you were to fight with me now, you might even be able to win the West Continent. But, since the Wolf Saint technique is so afraid of me, then I have no other choice." Yiqing Luo's voice wasn't loud, but it wasn't soft either. Coincidentally, it reached the ears of the surrounding Dark Forces. The way everyone looked at the Dark Forces changed. Wolf Saint Fa's face turned ashen. Hearing Yiqing Luo's ridicule, he couldn't wait to strangle her to death. What Yiqing Luo said was indeed not wrong. According to the current situation of the battle, it was only a matter of time before the royal army won. If Yi Qing Luo were to take action now, she would indeed be able to annihilate the dark forces in less than half an incense's time. Fighting with Yi Qing Luo alone was indeed the only chance to win the West Continent. Although the Wolf Saint technique didn't want to admit it. But he indeed couldn't defeat Yi Qing Luo. He had suffered quite a number of losses in Yi Qing Luo's hands. Moreover, Yi Qing Luo still had the divine relic in her hands. He wasn't Yi Qing Luo's match. But, to let him show weakness to Yi Qing Luo in front of the dark forces. Wouldn't that be telling the dark forces, don't struggle in vain, just surrender? The Wolf Saint technique, would become the joke of the dark forces. Star. Chapter 1997. Looking at the smiling young lady in front of him. Wolf Saint Magic's body tensed up, his face was extremely dark and terrifying. His malicious eyes were filled with viciousness. If he didn't agree, the people from the dark forces would probably be incited by Yi Qing Luo to change sides again. If he agreed, would he be able to delay until his trump card appeared? The battlefield was in a dead silence. The air was filled with a bloody and oppressive atmosphere. Everyone's vision seemed to be gathered on Wolf Saint Magic. This battle had been going on for too long. The armies on both sides were exhausted. Especially the Dark Forces army, they were already suffering unspeakably. The truly powerful holy techniques tried their best to hide behind them. Even when they were killing the royal army, they didn't pay attention at all. They watched their own brothers, one by one, die in front of their eyes. Not only were they exhausted physically, their hearts were also extremely tired. If Wolf Saint Magic agreed to fight Yi Qing Luo alone, the current situation was the best choice for the dark forces. However, Wolf Saint Magic remained silent for a long time. Apparently, he had no intention to fight. That restless heart of the dark forces gradually started to feel a sense of disgust. To begin with, they were already feeling extremely indignant after being repeatedly defeated by a group of humans from the lower realms. One must know that Nirvana realm was the lowest level of living beings. It was known as the lower realm's lowly place. They, who were above the lower realm forces, were actually beaten by a bunch of lowly humans without any ability to resist. This was especially so for their masters. The 3 saint techniques and the 4 pharaohs had allowed their own brothers to be wiped out by the royal army until their blood stained the ground. Yet, not a single one of them was willing to step forward to avenge them. Those 3 saint magic and 4 pharaohs hid faster than anyone else. Looking at the royal army's side. Every time they injured one of them, there would be countless of them rushing forward, shouting for their lives to take revenge for that person. Moreover, the royal army's various forces all cooperated and protected each other. In comparison, the people from the dark forces felt a strong sense of difference in treatment. Wolf Saint Magic and the rest totally disregarded the lives of these small fries. They fought with their lives, just because of Wolf Saint Magic's words. What was it for? The Dark Coalition's morale was completely shaken by this. Just as the morale of the army was falling and the Wolf Saint Law had yet to answer. A soft and delicate voice that pretended to be shy sounded out with a hint of probing intent. Wolf Saint Technique, why don't you let Fei accept the challenge? Wolf Xingfa was startled and lowered his head to look at the person in his arms. The young girl's face was bashful, but her expression was firm. The Wolf Saint technique is powerful and domineering. Why would he fight a 15-year-old girl? I'm afraid student Yi Qing Luo is planning on this. Yan Zhenfei slowly retreated from Wolf Saint Law's embrace. She raised her eyes and fixed her gaze on Yi Qing Luo. Student Yi Qing Luo, if Wolf Saint Dharma were to fight one-on-one with you, even if he won, Wolf Saint Dharma's face wouldn't be glorious, and in the end, he would even be accused of bullying a young lady. Do you really think that everyone is an idiot who can be fooled by you? Yan Zhenfei's words easily resolved the predicament of the Wolf Saint technique, and even raised the wolf saint technique, taking the opportunity to pull a wave of hatred towards Yiqing Luo. It wasn't that the wolf saint technique didn't dare to accept the challenge. He just couldn't be bothered to argue with a little girl. Yan Zhenfei's words were indeed reasonable. Even if Wolf Saint Dharma won Yiqing Luo, no matter how heaven-defying or abnormal Yiqing Luo was, everyone would only feel that Wolf Saint Dharma was bullying a young lady. No wonder Wolf Saint Dharma had not accepted the challenge for so long. Star. Chapter 1998. The Wolf Saint technique also assumed a dignified posture. He narrowed his sinister eyes and wore an indifferent expression, as if he disdained to explain and was too lazy to do so. His long arm gently pinched Yan Zhenfei's shoulder, and his lips curled into a smile of admiration. It was obvious that he was really satisfied with Yan Zhenfei's intelligence. Yan Zhenfei's eyelashes drooped shyly, and following that, she looked towards Yiqing Luo in a natural and unrestrained manner. So, for this battle, I will represent Wolf Saint technique to fight. You and I are around the same age, moreover we are students from the same academy, so no matter if we win or lose, it is an extremely normal thing. Yiqing Luo crossed her arms over her chest as her brows rose, squinting at Yan Zhenfei. In his memories, Yan Zhenfei wasn't this smart. Although this lady was Yan Shaoyi's elder sister who shared the same father and mother. But, their IQ was definitely not on the same level. But today, Yan Zhenfei's performance really made Yiqing Luo astonished. Yan Zhenfei looked calm on the surface, but in her heart, she was extremely nervous. Especially after meeting Yiqing Luo's gaze, she felt a chill running down her spine as her legs started to tremble. However, in order to help the Yan family hold on to the Wolf Saint technique's thigh, she had to support the family on her own. She wanted to prove that the Yan family's choice of her, the eldest miss, was definitely not wrong. She would absolutely not give Yan Shaoyi any chance to make a comeback in the Yan family. The eldest daughter of the Yan family could only be her, Yan Zhenfei. Thinking of this, Yan Zhenfei's eyes shone with determination. She took a deep breath, raised her head and looked at Yiqing Luo with a smile, using the same words to counter. Could it be that student Yiqing Luo is afraid? Compared to the last time they met, Yan Zhenfei seemed to have changed into another person. Yiqing Luo clicked her tongue. She really didn't know what kind of blow made this unruly and headstrong young lady grow up so quickly. Could it be because she realized that Yan Shaoyi was a student of the devil class, and her innate talent was above hers? A sense of crisis. Yiqing Luo narrowed her long and narrow eyes as she met Yan Zhenfei's provocative gaze. Afraid? Do you think you have the qualifications to make me afraid? She sneered arrogantly and wantonly. Yan Zhenfei, you can't even compare to a single hair on my Shaoyi. Tell me, what right do you have to fight with me? You. Yan Zhenfei's face darkened. Comparing Yan Shaoyi to her was simply her reverse scale. Yan Shaoyi, that wastrel, what right did she have to be compared with her? He seemed to have seen through Yan Zhenfei's thoughts. Yiqing Luo smiled faintly as she added, No, you're a fellow who can't even take one move from me. How are you fit to be mentioned on the same level as my Shaoyi? Yan Zhenfei's eyes instantly widened as her face sunk, as she directly rushed towards Yiqing Luo's direction. In a flash, Yan Zhenfei took out two sharp knives from her waist. The two blades spun rapidly in her palms and a powerful profound energy exploded out from her body. Do you really have to come here to die? Yiqing Luo's smile was extremely shallow as she yawned impatiently. Then I can only satisfy you. Yiqing Luo's words landed. Her flame-like sleeves suddenly began to dance. A gust of wind swept up. A cold glint flashed past Yan Zhenfei's eyes as the twin blades in her hands suddenly condensed in extremely powerful profound energy. The twin blades spun, extremely sharp. But in a blink of an eye, It was already nearing Yiqing Luo, as it directly slashed towards Yiqing Luo's vital spot. Bam! Yiqing Luo's hurricane clashed against Yan Jinfei's twin blades. Chapter 1999. Just as everyone thought that Yan Jinfei would be sent flying along with Yiqing Luo's hurricane. But they saw Yan Jinfei gripping her twin blades tightly as she bit her lower lip to stop the blood gushing out from her throat, as she suddenly pressed downwards. The spectating commoners didn't know how much effort Yan Jinfei had expended in this move. They only saw. Yan Jinfei wasn't sent flying by Yiqing Luo, instead. She was forced towards Yiqing Luo. Even the 10 Views sect master was unable to do this. Yan Jinfei actually did it. What was the background of the Yan family? Why was this Yan family's daughter so powerful? Even Yiqing Luo was slightly stunned. Was Yan Jinfei so concerned about her, or was it because she mentioned Yan Xiaoyi's topic? So concerned that she didn't even want her life. She actually forcefully broke through her profound energy, trying to take away her life. One must know that this kind of action of forcefully charging into the profound energy. Any slight carelessness would cost one's life. She really didn't know if she should praise Yan Jinfei for being brave or ridicule her for being dumb and ignorant. The twin blades in Yan Jinfei's hands shone with a sharp glint. At the moment when she broke through the profound energy, Yan Jinfei's lips curled into a cold smile as the short blade in her hands swiftly slashed towards Yiqing Luo's neck. Yiqing Luo, do you really think that I'm still the Yan Jinfei who was at your mercy? Yan Jinfei raised her chin complacently. I'm now an Earth Profound 7th grade cultivator. Now, go and die. Yes, Yan Jinfei was now an Earth Profound 7th grade cultivator. For her age. Earth Profound 7th grade, she could be considered as a genius among geniuses. A rare existence in this world. She who was in the 7th grade realm could be considered as a high-leveled cultivator. Just based on that slut Yiqing Luo who only knew how to bully others, how could she be compared to her? Look, wasn't she able to easily break through Yiqing Luo's profound wave now? Even if Yiqing Luo didn't want to fight with her. She absolutely wanted Yiqing Luo to fight with her. She wanted to personally crush Yiqing Luo's arrogance and pride. As long as she destroyed Yiqing Luo. Even if Yan Xiaoyi wanted to make use of external factors to regain the Yan family. Even then, he wouldn't have the chance. The complacent Yan Jinfei didn't notice that when she mentioned that she was already at Earth Profound 7th grade, Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a scornful arc. Earth Profound 7th grade. If I remember correctly. The last time he saw Yan Jinfei. Yan Jinfei was just a Xian practitioner who had just entered the Earth Profound realm. At that time, he couldn't even take one move from Yan Xiaoyi. In just a few short months, he had already advanced to the 7th grade of the Earth Profound realm. How much effort did the Yan family put into Yan Jinfei? He actually forcefully raised Yan Jinfei's profound grade to such a level in such a short time. One had to know that it was impossible for a person's profound level to have such a qualitative leap with just elixirs. Even the dark force's abstruse Yin Qi could not help Yan Jinfei improve so quickly. Moreover, it was obvious that the Yan family had only established a relationship with the dark forces today. Where did Yan Jinfei's change come from? Yiqing Luo, you know you can't hide anymore, so are you prepared to die obediently? Yan Jinfei's sharp voice interrupted Yiqing Luo's thoughts. She raised her eyes and saw Yan Jinfei's attack coming towards her. Like a hot knife through butter, it was extremely ferocious. Yan Jinfei neared. Yiqing Luo could clearly see the complacent and arrogant expression on her face. Yiqing Luo laughed softly as her sleeves danced once again. As though it was a casual sweep. The red profound glow shot upwards. Star. Chapter 2000. Ah! A blood-curdling scream rang out. Yan Zhenfei's body was struck by the dark radiance and she flew backward. She fell heavily to the ground and rolled a few times on the ground. After a long while, he steadied himself. Yan Zhenfei mustered up her willpower as she half knelt up, looking at Yiqing Luo in disbelief. Was she dreaming? Yiqing Luo had obviously just casually waved her sleeves earlier. How could he block her twin blades? Moreover, it was done with such ease that it seemed as if it was as easy as blowing off dust. Earlier when she broke through Yiqing Luo's profound wave, she was obviously unscathed and didn't suffer any harm at all. Didn't it prove that Yiqing Luo's profound grade was not as good as hers? Why did a casual wave of Yiqing Luo's sleeve have such a powerful force? No, she absolutely did not believe that Yiqing Luo's profound grade would be above Earth Profound 7th grade. That's it. Yiqing Luo ridiculed him. I've said this before, just based on scum like you, I totally disdain to fight with you. As she spoke, she slightly raised her chin and shot a torch-like gaze at Lang Xingfa, who was watching the battle from the side. She arrogantly provoked, Lang Xingfa, are you still planning to hide behind a trashy woman like a tortoise? Yiqing Luo. Yan Zhenfei's eyes were burning with rage as she gave a low howl and charged towards Yiqing Luo. She didn't believe it. She didn't believe that Yiqing Luo's profound grade was above her. She didn't believe that after paying such a huge price and growing to this stage, she still wasn't able to defeat Yiqing Luo. She, Yan Zhenfei, was the only young miss of the Yan family. No one can replace her position. She must kill Yiqing Luo, to cut off Yan Xiaoyi's chance to make a comeback. Looking at Yan Zhenfei's frenzied and reckless expression, Yiqing Luo couldn't help but burst out laughing. Yiqing Luo's figure flashed. Yan Zhenfei missed. Before she could regain her balance, Yiqing Luo had already raised her leg and kicked towards Yan Zhenfei. With a loud thud, Yan Zhenfei knelt face down on the ground. He appeared to be in an extremely sorry state. Yiqing Luo. You bitch. The last word was forcefully swallowed back into his stomach. Yiqing Luo rushed towards her face once again and sent another flying kick downwards. This kick caused Yan Zhenfei to roll a few more times on the ground. She crashed into the corpses and bones on the ground, stopping the inertia. Yan Zhenfei, with your trashy strength, you have the nerve to stand up for Wolf Saint Fei? Don't forget the agreement I made with the Wolf Saint Law. Yiqing Luo looked down arrogantly at Yan Zhenfei from above as she gave an extremely ridiculing smile. This battle, if the dark forces were to lose, then they would have to scram out of Nirvana realm forever. She raised an eyebrow. Her figure flashed and she appeared in front of Yan Zhenfei. What do you want to do? Yan Zhenfei was shocked and wanted to carry him away. Yiqing Luo suddenly stretched out her hand and locked her lower jaw. Her slender fingers clenched tightly, exerting all her strength. Her charming eyes curved and she smiled devilishly. So, you scum, scram to the side. You are not qualified to represent the dark forces. Yan Zhenfei was in so much pain that cold sweat appeared on her forehead. Her eyes were filled with hatred as she stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo. However, Yan Zhenfei had thought too highly of herself. Her chance to glare at her angrily didn't last for too long. Yiqing Luo had already thrown Yan Zhenfei aside, as though she was throwing rubbish. Her gaze was directed towards Wolf Saint Law. At the same time, her feet moved and she flew up. As though there was wind beneath her feet, she brought along a strong profound energy as she attacked towards Wolf Saint Law's direction. Wolf Saint Law, if you don't want to fight, then I'll take it that you've admitted defeat. Yiqing Luo gave a crafty smile as the glower flame fan in her hand suddenly opened up. Numerous tiny silver needles shot out with a swoosh 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 sound. Star. Chapter 2001. The wolf St. Law's eyes turned cold. The tiny silver needles flickered in his eyes. Wolf Saint technique, be careful. Yan Zhenfei struggled to climb up from the ground, but her ribs, which had been broken by Yi Qing Luo, couldn't support her strength at all. The wolf saint technique spread his 5 fingers, and a stream of mysterious yin qi was released from his palm. The palm energy was strong and it rushed towards the silver needles that were coming towards him. His face was extremely gloomy. Looking at Yi Qing Luo's gaze, it was filled with an intense malevolence. Wolf Saint technique knew very well that he would not be able to gain any advantage in Yi Qing Luo's hands if he were to forcefully fight with Yi Qing Luo. In the end, he would be the one to suffer and lose face. After the wolf Saint Fa sent out his palm wind, he dodged to the side and shouted coldly, "This Saint Fa has never agreed to such an unfair wager." Just as the eldest daughter of the Yen family said, "Even if I defeat you and obtain the Western continent, I will only become a laughingstock. Therefore, there's no such thing as admitting defeat if I don't fight you." These words made Yi Qing Luo's eyes ooze out a sneer of disdain. He was clearly no match for her. Yet, he purposely used such high-sounding words to cover up this fact. Then, let her turn the wolf saint technique into the joke of the West continent. Let the wolf saint technique completely lose the morale of the army. To catch bandits, first catch the ringleader. As long as the wolf saint technique was defeated by her, would the dark forces still have the mood to continue fighting? Yi Qing Luo's pink lips curled upwards as her fingers moved. Those numerous silver needles were like a heavenly maiden scattering flowers, abruptly avoiding the wolf saint technique's palm wind, shooting out from all directions. The momentum of the silver needles was extremely fast. From the angle of the wolf saint technique, he could almost clearly see that the silver needles were filled with black poisonous gas. Poison. That would be another one of Yi Qing Luo's good shows. If he was corroded by the poisonous gas, I'm afraid, a life worse than death. Wolf Saint technique knew very well that under Yi Qing Luo's innocent and harmless appearance hid a heart that was completely unlike a 15-year-old girl's. He wanted to avoid it. But the angle of Yi Qing Luo's silver needles were extremely tricky. The wolf saint technique dodged the incoming silver needles. However, there was no way for him to avoid the silver needles that shot at him from other angles. Just as Yi Qing Luo's silver needle was about to shoot towards the wolf saint technique, suddenly, everything around the West Wave continent was covered by a powerful pressure. It was a kind of pressure that could only be condensed by a high-level profound practitioner. The surrounding trees were rustling from the strong winds. The sound came from afar, as if it was right in front of them. A strong pressure spread out. His target was Yi Qing Luo's direction. Ding ding dong dong, there were a few crisp sounds. The silver needles were swept into a ball by the hurricane. This powerful dark force flew straight towards him. The armies on both sides were sent flying one after another. Everyone was shocked. What kind of power was this? He was actually able to easily blast all of us profounders flying. Everyone in the Mu family reacted quickly. Before even more profound practitioners were injured by that pressure. Without any hesitation, he used his own power to form another barrier that enveloped the direction of the royal army. As for the Mu couple, they followed Long Yunzhan and the rest as they speedily headed towards the direction of those cultivators who were sent flying, to receive those cultivators in case they caused any more damage. But the dark forces weren't so lucky. Just as the strong pressure covered the sky and covered the earth, 3 saint techniques and 4 pharaohs escaped faster than any of them. Not to mention protecting them. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.